Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Crucible. We didn't get a chance to advertise this as much as we normally do. A typical debate. We're running way behind today, and I had something else come up that I had to take care of. But luckily, both of our debaters are here, and we're able to put on the show for you. We're glad everybody tuned in, and that I'm sure a lot more are going to tune in as soon as they find out there's actually a damn broadcast going on at the moment. So, the topic tonight is going to be on libertarianism and hierarchies between Counterpoints and Fabian Liberty. I know both of these gentlemen as being kind of good faith. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. They're both, they're both kind of good faith. Yeah, I'm just going to stick with that. Anyway, it's going to be a good debate. I'm looking forward to it. I like both of their communities. Ours is a little more brutal than theirs. Well, maybe not Fabian's, but it's going to be a blast. So we're going to jump into the debate, and I will be right back with our debaters.
Yeah, off the hook. I was going to say, if y'all can hear me, I can tell fucking Chinese and Japanese people apart. So the fact that they can, I don't know if I believe that. I need to see your study. Koreans and Japanese people, I have no fucking idea. But Chinese and Japanese people, absolutely. Fabian is the guy who said that I was an oath breaker. So I think he's also a military veteran too, so it's kind of weird. They do have a banger fucking song. Got a little crossbow in my back.
We'll do it live. And we're back with both of these evil scumbags. I'm glad they're both right here on the Crucible to engage on this wondrous topic tonight. Counterpoints, how you been? How you doing?
Oh, I'm having a beautiful fucking night. And on top of that, I think kinda good faith is the perfect summary for both of us. Like, Fabian and I have screamed at each other quite a few times, and then there's been a few times that we've pushed past that and had like a good conversation too. So, it's like 50% memes, 50% shit posts. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I shit post all the time in Fabian Liberty's server because I feel like they all deserve it.
I agree with that.
I think the key here, I think the real key here is that a lot of people, they have their favorite content creators. And what they do is they view them they view all of the other content creators through the prism more often than not of like their debate persona in panels. And so, and the thing is that a lot of people get exposed to people through blood sports. And I think there's a massive difference between me on a panel with 7 other people and me in a 1v1.
All right, so I'll bring the heat then. That's fine.
Way worse than a 1v1. Way worse than a 1v1. Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to take a second. Counterpoint, shout your channel out. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, so my name's Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints. We just broke like 27K, about to break 28. My most popular shit is Warhammer 40K breakdowns, which is nerd shit, but it's good nerd shit. So if you're into violence and religion and extremism and people getting their heads chopped off with chainsaw swords, then check that shit out. And then also if you want to check out political rants and essays, I do that as well. And then I do love a good debate, which is why I'm here. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
You had me at Chainsaw Blades. Fabian Liberty, go ahead. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm Fabian Liberty. Twitter, Rumble, YouTube, everywhere. It's Fabian Liberty. We need YouTube subs. We have been way over the 4,000 watch hours, like since 500 subs. And for whatever reason, people love watching our content and they stay there. But, we still need like 300 to get monetized on YouTube. So wherever you want to put me, let's be honest.
Sub, right? We got to get them over there. Sub.
It's usually the other way around. People say that it's harder to get the watch hours than the 1,000 subs, but not us. But yeah, Fabian Liberty wherever you want. We do. We're an anarcho-capitalist theo stream. We do some philosophy reading nights. We do some, a lot of reactions. We do a lot of debates. We do a lot of politics. We occasionally do a lot of hardcore theory shit, but not a lot of gaming and not a lot of Warhammer 40K stuff. I don't know anything about Warhammer 40K, but I learned recently that apparently orcs can just like fucking imagine things will be true and they'll be true. And it's kind of like, how you might think of anarchism, where like you just imagine it and hopefully it becomes true. And so like, I want to be an orc boy now. Like I want you to teach me the BOI philosophy, and I'm ready to go on a rampage.
Can I
Okay. Yeah.
share real quick?
Go ahead.
So not only is that true, but also like this universe, right? It's constant warfare between like 7 different races, and the orcs are built specifically to enjoy conflict. So out of billions of life forms that are all miserable and getting murdered every single day, the orcs are the only ones having a good time. So you picked the right faction.
Let's go.
Well, so here's the thing, you fucking nerd. You get to open up. No, I'm kidding. Fabian Scott, he's got the open tonight. You've got your opening statement ready, right?
Yeah. So it's my understanding that, Counterpoints and I are kind of going to go a little bit off the cuff here because I wasn't really sure what we wanted to talk about. But the onus of this debate was I memed on Counterpoints and called him a leftist. And then he said, but you're an anarchist, you're against hierarchies. And I'm like, fucking no. And then the debate became, hierarchies. So that's what I scripted off of, but we can kind of go afterwards.
Yeah. And I can follow that too. So for your intro, I can follow it for sure.
Okay.
Your floor is yours.
Oh, I did. Are you starting the timer? We each have like 7 minutes or something.
Yeah. Timer started.
Okay, so hierarchies. Hierarchies are the classification of authority or status to individuals in an organization or system. It is often thought that anarchism is the abolishment of all hierarchies. This is a falsity. Let me turn to the historical record of hierarchies and anarchist theory. Much to the chagrin of the anti-anarchists and the left-wing anarchists, the early anarchists were not opposed to hierarchy. The mutualists, such as Proudhon, were against nobility and privilege granted via title. Us anarchists have many issues with the mutualist systems and beliefs, but hierarchy is not one of them. The individualists, such as Tucker, Warren, and Spooner, explicitly believed in private property and the sovereign rule of man over his property and self. The earliest Christian anarchists, such as William Batchelder Greene, have always held the position of hierarchy as not only justifiable, but required under God. But the socialist says, what of the early syndicalist and contemporary of Proudhon, Bakunin? Anarchism has always been against hierarchies. Well, no. Bakunin did indeed write extensively on how the state is created with a system of hierarchies that impose the bureaucracy onto people and reinforce class structures. God and State is a great work that explains how statism is reinforced through hierarchy and the bureaucracy is made up of, quote, the priestly body of the state. And in What is Authority? Bakunin makes an appeal to natural law and individualism as a means of attacking imposed hierarchy. But I challenge anyone to find works from the early anarchists attacking the idea of hierarchy itself. So what of anarchist societies? The Republic of Kospaya, the Ego Sokuko Iki, chiefdoms, early communes, Icelandic Tane system, almost all anarchist societies, especially those with success, had a council of elders or a voluntary hierarchical system. Hell, even the Roma had a complex system of laws and traditions enforced hierarchically until a judge was needed for cases, until law came into question. So where does this absurd idea that anarchism is without hierarchies come from? The answer is, of course, almost always the same when a modern ideology has become poisoned: communism. It was not until Kropotkin that the communist philosophy begins to solidify its infection into anarchist theory. In Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution, 1902, Kropotkin argues that natural hierarchies are against evolution and that competition is a false premise for growth of a species. It is Kropotkin, Maltesta, Hermos, and more that envelop the ideology of anarchism, bleeding the poisonous utopic ideas of Marx into the theory. Eventually, in On Anarchism, 1972, Chomsky attempts to logically bridge the gap back into reality with his definition that argues anarchism is against unjustifiable hierarchies, which is true. Some adopt this idea for a while, presuming that capitalism is inherently exploitative from their Marxist position, but he is eventually tossed aside. Today, the anarchists of the left-wing variety resemble communism far more than they do anarchism. Luckily, in the 50s, a young Jew with radical parents resurrect the writings of Tucker and later Spooner. He blends the genius of early anarchists and appropriate economic theory, creating the true torch-bearing philosophy of anarchism, anarcho-capitalism. Anarchism is not against hierarchy. Communists are. And I welcome further discussion on voluntary hierarchy and how this is different than imposed authority throughout this discussion.
We appreciate that opening statement, Fabian. We'll move over to you, Counterpoints, for your opening statement, and then right after that, if you guys want to move right into the open floor, and we can take it from there. Go ahead.
Sure. No, this is a fucking based way to begin it because I fucking hate all of the shit that ANCAPs, allegedly, based off of that opening statement, hate. The reason why is because I think that you can create synthetically a quality of opportunity where you take human beings, you feed them through a system, and then you basically say, hey, now compete in the market. We've given you a whole bunch of skill sets in order to do it, and go ahead and do so. But I think that to pretend that all of these people, through all of the idiosyncrasies of personality, like whether or not they're hard workers, whether or not they wake up early, whether or not they like sleeping in, what kind of job preference do they prefer, whether or not they want to serve in security or retail or restaurant, or they want to be in industry, or they want to do tech, or they want to do aerospace, or they want to do this or want to do that. These ventures are naturally going to create differences in social status and economic well-being and social output and the way people revere different kinds of people and all that kind of shit. And trying to force everybody into an egalitarian framework, I think, is a fool's dream. And I'm happy to hear it dismissed as a fool's dream so early. Anti-statism is kind of where we defer. And the reason why I was kind of laughing during our little Twitter sparring match, which started this whole debate, is the left versus right dichotomy is oftentimes associated with the French Revolution and like anti-monarchism, and the right wing being a defense of institutions and the left wing being pro-people. When we're talking about, like, I view myself as being supportive of the proper function of certain institutions. I do believe in the state because I think that when there's breach of contract or violence or risky behavior or something like that, you do need somebody who's outside of the situation to render a relatively objective judgment on the scenario. And then I do believe in the church to some regards, not because I'm a religious person, but because I think that religion in particular is a great vehicle for communicating socially beneficial and advantageous behaviors that continue to get the species to thrive. And then I'm trying to think of like another social institution that I support, but if you're talking about the police or military or the church or any of that kind of stuff, these are all things that I support. And as a result, within the French dichotomy of being anti-institutionalist, I think I would be viewed as right-wing. I don't know where the accusation of me being left-wing comes from, except for like I'm okay with black people and I don't want trans people to all kill themselves, and I want the gays to not feel like they have to hide in the closet. I know that's very cringe in conservative circles, but I don't view that as necessary to right-wing philosophy. And while I'm not like super heavily versed on it, there are, the father of conservative thinking, I'll wrap this up in a second, but the father of like conservatism, Edmund Burke, viewed conservatism as like the balance between rigid traditionalism and like zealous progressivism, where conservatism is supposed to be about like what works in our society and we will defend it because it functions, and then what do we let go in our society because it's not important. And one of his greatest quotes that I remember is him saying like, the social contract is not just between the living, it's also between the dead, the living, and those yet to be born. I believe that fundamentally. The reason why I hate modern liberalism, the reason why I hate modern progressivism, the reason why I hate modern leftism is because they're all engineered around the individual, which I find frustrating because they don't take into account the traditions that have been passed on from the past that might serve social utility and be advantageous to them now and should be perpetuated into the future. And some of these hedonist, nihilist fucking bastards don't give a shit about the next generation that's coming up. And so that's why, I'm literally constantly accused of being like a liberal or progressive because I'm okay with gays and blacks. But to me, it has nothing to do with being right-wing if you're looking at it from a historical lens. And I'll leave there so we can get into the open.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for that opening statement. Make sure everybody out there in Crucible Land hits that like button, shares it everywhere because it's awesome. Remember that the Comfy launch is September 3rd. It's going to be the best fucking streaming platform that's ever existed in the history of mankind. I'm not even overselling it, right? Not even overselling it. Maybe just
Are you and Nick on better terms now?
Who?
Oh, okay, never mind.
No, I mean, who I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Who did you say?
Nick. Isn't he the fucking one of the founders of Cozy?
That's the guy who did Cozy. I'm launching Comfy.
Oh, the words.
You must have missed. You must have missed it.
Comfy, I missed Comfy over Cozy.
Comfy stream. Better watch the stream from yesterday. So,
oh shit.
Anyway, September 3rd. Don't forget. Right, the launch 24-hour Fuck Fuentes Festival. 3 Fs. Best A-log streamers who've ever existed. Make sure everybody's there for the Fuck Fuentes Festival. Let's get the debate rolling, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's get moving. Counterpoints, Fabian Liberty.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
we can start wherever you want to, but basically, if you wanted, I think I used the historical definition of leftism from the French Revolution. How do you view that paradigm? Like, what makes a leftist in your view?
So the problem I have is like, there is like, how do I put this? Nobody has a good definition of left versus right? The way that I would perceive left and right is through the philosophy, and you seem to look at it from kind of Burke, this idea of like political philosophy. And the problem that I have with that being what right wing is when we look at, let's say, the mission statement from the National Review, right? Conservatives, the kind of the rebirth of the conservative movement of neoconservatism, right? Conservative is the individual that like says stop, slow down, right? And the problem that I have with that, of calling that conservatism, right? Having faith in institutions, but having this balance, is that it is always a march to the victory of the leftists. It is always, the left is consequentialist, the left is postmodernist, and the right is supposed to be modernist, right? And I would pre-modern, right? I would consider myself liberal. I would consider myself modern. I would consider myself individual philosophy and freedom. And the right kind of concerned with values that they have. And they're okay with whatever it is that the left does, so long as it doesn't encroach upon their values. But the problem that I see is that the right is exceedingly losing all of those values. They're not going to church anymore. They're not having large families. They're not sticking by any of those Christian moral values that kind of grounded them as capable of fighting the kind of encroachment of the left. And the right has been losing for 150 years, right? They just lose over and over and over again as the left gains victory. They gain it under FDR. They gain it under the Federal Reserve. They gain it under more socialist government. The government has become less and less constitutional. No matter how you look at it, whatever the values of conservatism are, the left has won in the last 150 years. And so the reason I accuse you of being a leftist is because you're not a deontologist. You're not grounded per se in a lot of values, but instead you're a rule utilitarianist. And you're willing to balance and you're willing to negotiate with what you perceive to be the progressives and the more left wing. It's not because I think that you care about black people. I'm an individualist, right? We have that same opinion. It's not that you or don't want trans to kill themselves. I have plenty of trans people in my community. I don't want trans to kill themselves. These are cool things like that we might meme about, right? Where like other right-wing people accuse you of being a leftist. But what I'm talking about is that your philosophy isn't grounded in individualist philosophy like mine is, and it's not grounded in deontology like pre-modernists are, that say that these things are wrong because God says they're wrong. Instead, your philosophy is that of a leftist, but you have what you value personally is a lot of institutions that you think are doing a good enough job and you don't want to fuck them up. And so you say, hey, slow down. Leftism can't happen all at once. Leftism should just happen a little bit. We should just allow a little bit of leftism. And I would say that as someone that is fighting against the left, that I consider that just as leftist as the radical fucking leftist, because it cedes ground and territory to them instead of actually fighting back, instead of turning that tide towards individualist philosophy and freedom like I want, or the right that is pre-modernist that wants to go back to religious values, which I also kind of disagree with in some regard.
Uh-oh. So the reason why I'm saying uh-oh is because you and I participated in the debate circuit. We were on Prime Kai a whole bunch. We were on, Hippy Dippy a whole bunch. I'm sure we bumped into each other half a dozen to a dozen times. And oftentimes I use the language of my opponent. And the reason why I use the language and the moral reasoning of my opponent is because I am trying to get them to drift my way. The truth is that if we're using, I could be using these terms incorrectly. If we're using utilitarianism as just like an appeal to like the most amount of good for the most amount of people versus like deontology, like a certain set of principles that you will adhere to on an individual basis or just as like a rooted basis, because I don't fucking know what your rooting system is. Maybe you can explain it to me. But I actually have like...
We can get into that, yeah.
Yeah, I have deontological breaks with... what would you call utilitarian frameworks? One of them, the key one being the death penalty, by the way. So for instance, like I don't give a solitary fuck. Like I'm actually getting a little worked up just thinking about it. I don't give a solitary fuck what utilitarian appeals there are for Anders Breivik or fucking serial killers to continue living in the fucking prison. Walk them out back and fucking put a 45 caliber fucking round in the back of their head. By the state, by the way, okay? The state should do that after a rigorous fucking judicial process.
Hold on, pause.
But
I love that you say by the state is like your version of in a video game.
Yeah, but I'm very serious.
Let the government do it. Then it's
Let the
okay.
government do it. I think for TOS, then it's okay. But at the same time, no. But I'm saying, like, if you know this person's 100% guilty of heinous fucking crimes, I don't see any kind of like, I don't give a fuck about whatever stupid fucking leftoid goddamn lab coat study you have that says that letting serial killers fucking live is better for society. I don't give a shit. Fucking kill them. And so the point is that and then also on like an individual basis, there are things like you could come to me with well, actually I think this would be rooted from a utilitarian standpoint, but you could come to me with like half a dozen studies that say like, oh, actually being promiscuous and doing whatever the fuck you want and having like multi-household families and all that kind of stuff actually shows on an individual level that you can be happier and you'll have all these statistics. Even if there wasn't a study supporting my position, my instinct would be, no, fuck that. Like monogamy for most people, sure, there's exceptions, but monogamy for family units is the way to go, not just because it's going to be a more stable household for the most amount of kids, but also because like you're giving like I'll just meme a little bit, like you're giving like an even pussy distribution to society, so you don't create a bunch of fucking incels that go into the corner and start doing mass shootings and shit. So there's plenty of like individual principled stances that I will yank out of the utilitarian framework. I'm not like rigidly duct taped to it, solidly.
Okay, so first of all, what it sounds like you're describing is not necessarily deontology, because you're not grounding it and saying, God says this, right? You're not grounding it and say this is wrong no matter what because of a belief system. What it sounds like you're describing is rule utilitarianism, right? Where there are certain things that we have discovered over and over and over again because of their consequences always turn out to be bad. And this is a discoverable thing that we should just follow this rule, even if the information given to us at a present time is saying the other thing. We've seen it over and over again. And this is still a form of utilitarianism. And while, I appreciate rule utilitarianism as being better let's say, than like the kind of amorphous leftist version of consequentialism, it still is biased by what it is that you choose to look at and what data points you choose to believe. And it's also biased because you don't have perfect knowledge, right? So you don't know what the consequences of anything are, forever into the future. You just assume them to be bad because it's been your experience that they've been bad up until this point, and you think that they might lead to bad outcomes.
What's your cornerstone of your deontological framework?
Well,
I'm not a deontologist.
Hang on, real quick before we get into actual framework here for morality, which I don't have a problem with, if we can tie it back into hierarchy somehow. If we can't, if we just can't do the hierarchy debate, if that's just like out the fucking window, I'm fine with that. But if we're still going to talk about hierarchies, I'd like to hear something about them.
Yeah,
right?
actually, let me address that, because I think I can hit the coffin with a fucking nail on that one. So here's the thing. I think the reason why we're not going to talk about hierarchies, but we will talk about the definition of like leftism, philosophy, how we analyze society, how do we develop policy, how do we define the right versus left, how do we proceed into the future. The reason why we're not going to talk about hierarchy as much is because I think we agree. Like so for instance, like I don't like unjustified hierarchy. I don't like birthright monarchism. Okay, so
Right.
you know. So if your dad was like a really cool guy and he ruled the kingdom super well for 100 years, but you came out of his fucking balls and you're an asshole, I don't give a shit that you have the claim to the right to the kingdom. You have to prove some kind of competence. So
I think
but
we will
I think
disagree
within competence
over time.
Well, and I was
think
going to say
because I would say that
competence can
certain
demonstrate
state
hierarchy.
institutions are unjustifiable hierarchies,
Sure,
such as
and
politicians, judges, police officers, things of that nature. I would say are unjustified hierarchies.
yeah, if you want us to argue about whether or not these things are justified or unjustified, I don't really give a fuck what brand of autism we go down. The only reason why the only reason why like I'm fucking drifting towards the foundational premise is because I feel like the crux of the argument, or what was kind of passed back to me, is that my analytical framework is left-leaning, and therefore it will constantly concede to the left over time. I agree with that assessment because of like Burke. Burke basically says that the art of conservatism is conceding what is no longer needing to be held on to strictly. But what I'm kind of pointing at is, what is the alternative? Like what is what you view to be foundationally right wing that you wish more people would adopt?
Well, I'm not a right wing. I don't like right wing philosophy and traditionalism.
Well,
right?
fuck.
I'm a modernist. All right, I'm an anarcho-capitalist, right? I'm an individualist. I'm a modernist. I'm in vein with the philosophy that led to the Enlightenment, not to the philosophy of the church and institutions and conservative traditionalism. We align far more than the left would, right? Because we have many of the same values.
So why do you resent my framework conceding to the left, but not in a way that's as aggressive as other fucking assholes? What is your framework that doesn't concede ground to the left?
Yeah, so I think the lesser of two evils is still evil, right?
Okay.
And that's kind of the main crux here. So what I would say is, in terms of my moral philosophy, right, is that as an anarcho-capitalist, we believe in argumentation ethics, and so we do not believe that you can justify property violence and destruction of property or theft, which would include involuntary hierarchical structures, the state, and taxation. That none of these things are morally justifiable because it's impossible for you to argue for them and be logically sound. To do so is to engage in a performative contradiction. You say that, you as someone who is arguing against me, right, is someone that is engaging in the idea that you yourself are an individual and that you have exclusive control over your body, right? You would recognize that you're engaging in using scarce resources, your time and your preference.
In your frame or my frame?
Either frame. Like we're talking about what is or isn't logical.
Well, this is actually where I want to shout out to the fascist gang, Fash. Thanks for teaching me something. So there's something called political corporatism within like fascist philosophy, whatever the fuck you want to talk about. I think Giovanni Gentile talks about it. And it's like the one thing that I actually agree with it. I don't agree with flexible authoritarianism or any of that bullshit. But one of the things that was like posited by a lot of nationalist philosophers is the fact that there's an illusion between collectivism and individualism. Like individuals, individualist philosophies. While I can agree that they've yielded so many freedoms and goods that I take for granted and I love and live right now, it's an illusion. You're born into this world. You're dependent on your family for the first 18 years of your life. You have to engage in a community. You have to do this. You have to do that. And your life at any time can be revoked by the broader community. But then collectivism is also an illusion because with the collective, you're ignoring the emotional and health and relational like idiosyncrasies of the individual. So collectivism is also a false god. This is part of the reason why I hate collectivism instinctively, is because I think that collectivist fascist ideology or collectivist communist ideology is fucking evil because it literally ignores the individual. But there is a middle ground, which is called, I believe, communitarianism, where you actually have the interplay between the individual and the community, and there actually isn't, I know this is very aloof or fucking nebulous, but there's an interplay between the rights and responsibilities of the individual and the rights and responsibilities of the community, and they're always in flux and conflict, but that flux and conflict isn't bad. It's actually how you negotiate.
I would say it's evil. I would say that it's evil to say that there's collective responsibility, right? That to say that that groups of individuals have responsibilities. And I think that's also an unjustifiable moral position. I think I think you engage in a performative contradiction by even doing that. Because the only way, so you demonstrate your preference over your body, right? And so your body is now presumed as human action in any space, right? Like in order for you to act, you have to be a rational actor that has control over your own body. So to presuppose anything that justifies you have to presuppose something that justifies the right of this exclusive control. To not do so, to say that other people have that you must sacrifice yourself to other people, or that you have responsibility outside of that exclusive control, right, is against the very idea of argumentation, because you're engaged in a performative contradiction. You're already
arguing. What is the performative contradiction?
So the performative contradiction is that you're attempting to make a statement that says that you don't have exclusive control, that you don't have those rights.
I don't.
Right. But in order to do that, you're a person demonstrating exclusive control.
No,
the two, it's not a logic. You can't just say no. Like it's not logically valid for you to say it.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
you can explain. Yeah, you can tell me how illogical it is in a second. One. I don't view human beings as like I'm not trying to project a worldview onto you. I'm just giving you what's popping into my head, okay? So I don't view human beings as like ephemeral, disconnected thought boxes that are able to create logic trees that then justify all of their actions. I view us as like stupid, shit-flinging fucking tribalist monkeys who have been murdering and raping each other for thousands of years, who accidentally took some shrooms and ate the right fucking kinds of fruits in order to develop brain patterns significant enough for us to have like philosophical and religious conversation. So I don't view this exercise as purely rational. I think it's an interplay between the rational and the irrational. For instance, like I had to pee fucking 20 minutes ago. I didn't say I have to pee. What should I do? I'll stand up. I'll grab the door. I'll open. I just fucking walked and did it, right? Because I'm acting on instinct. I'm acting on a subconscious fucking instinctive level, right? So that's number one. And then number two, I don't think that I'm acting outside of this projection of autonomous control. If I were to go behave like I could act in a whole bunch of autonomous control ways that would be absolutely upsetting to so many people. I could walk outside this and tell my wife, even though I haven't, that like I cheated on her or something. I get punched in the fucking face. I could take all the food and throw it in the fucking trash and say it was all rotted. My family would starve. Like I could walk around outside and start punching people in the face and the cops would show up. There's a lot in not just like human interaction. There's also natural interaction. So
Mm-hmm.
nature can come and fucking take me out at any goddamn time. So there's a lot of in starvation, disease, natural disasters. All of these external things do not grant me full autonomy over my person.
How?
They impose
You're saying, you
upon
say that
me
the environment,
physical
right,
demands. Yeah.
right. So the existence of a hurricane, right,
Uh-huh.
isn't an argument that you don't have exclusive control, that we live in reality, right? Like that the
Mhm.
world exists and things happen in the world isn't somehow a refutation of your ability to be able to make logical statements. The problem here, right, is that by you arguing, right, and by you having a conversation, you're demonstrating that you have exclusive control of your body. You say, well, I walk outside and I punch somebody, right? Well, what that is that is aggression against that other person's right, presumed right to the exclusive control of their body. This is the formulation of the ethic of the non-aggression principle. Is that what you're actually showing is you're actually demonstrating argumentation ethics by saying that, like, hey, I can say and do whatever I want to do so long as I'm not harming other people, so long as I'm not aggressing upon other people, right? And so the moral framework, if you will, of anarcho-capitalism is not necessarily putting forward a moral framework like the Marxists do or like the Christians do that say this is what is right. Instead, we are using logic to be able to break down what is not justifiable. That is why anarcho-capitalism is a descriptive legal system. And say if you're making a statement of a moral claim, we're simply
Mhm.
saying, well, that moral claim must follow logic or it is untrue. It is an impossibility proof. And so you can't actually justify via argumentation without invalidating the logic to aggress upon other people. And in fact, you kind of prove this by saying, I can't just go out and punch some other people. I can't like harm other people. Now, could you, let's say, tell your wife that you cheated on her? Yes, you could. And there's no legal reason for us to be able to stop you from doing that. And if it's true, you probably should tell your wife if you've been cheating on her, right? But what anarcho-capitalism is doing is it's not necessarily giving you an ought. What it's giving you is a system that can invalidate other people's oughts, Marxism being one of them.
Okay, we should probably follow that logic of invalidating other people's thoughts because I feel like we're going to get wrapped around an axle here. But for me, the reason why I'm not agreeing, but I'm willing to move into like something else that way we don't repeat ourselves, is this is not my understanding of biology or psychology. So for instance, like with biology, I'm not just the autonomous voice within my head that like shoots dialogue out of neurons. That's not just who I am. I am also a body. I am also made up of billions or trillions of gut bacteria that literally affect my mood. Also, when we're talking about like rational individuals participating in a logical framework and therefore invalidating whatever. It's like, dude, I could be fucking schizophrenic or goddamn bipolar. Just because I can put a sentence together doesn't mean that like and I disagree with you, doesn't mean that I'm outside the purview of forwarding like a rational fucking sentence. But at the same time, my rational or logical frame wouldn't necessarily follow going forward. Because if there's like an irrational or biological flaw in who and what I am, that fucking affects my logic train, then we're talking past each other. And here's another thing too.
But you're not you've yet to you're not really invalidating anything. What you're saying is that humans are fallible and that we have
flawed
environmental
and
pressures.
irrational. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. But we still have the capacity for reason. And it is that capacity for reason, right? That I think you would have to. So hold on, let me actually switch this to a question. Do you think that a moral claim can be true if it is illogical? Because that is what you are arguing, is that it is okay that it is an illogical claim because humans are not rational actors.
Okay.
Sometimes.
I'm tracking what you're asking me, I would just have to see the break in logic. So for instance, like, and this is where we might need to move to. I'm going to invalidate the oughts of other people. The reason why we might need to move here is maybe I would agree with you if I understood the oughts that you have invalidated. For me, the oughts that we're kind of discussing in this conversation can't be invalidated because of morality. As far as I understand morality is just the analysis of good and bad, right? So if there was a child...
I'll work with that definition. That's fine. There's a lot of definitions.
And if you want to give me your definition in a second, that's fine. As far as I understand it, morality is just the analysis of what humans deem as good and bad. So for me, if there is a child that's starving in front of me and I have the capacity to give them food that will save their life, my moral ought to that external party is going to require that I feed that child. It's not an option. Like, I understand, like, I could say, like, no, this is my food, fuck you. Like, I get that. But the moral, whatever the fuck you want to call it, the moral system overrides whatever fucking autonomy that you're saying I have.
I'm really glad you brought that up that example, right? Because under argumentation ethics, right, we would not invalidate either action that you take in that position, right? It is not an act of aggression to not feed the child. It is also not an act of aggression to feed the child voluntarily, right? Whatever moral framework you want to have, neither decision in whether or not you choose to feed the child is invalidated by argumentation ethics. But what would be invalidated by argumentation ethics, for example, would be the government coming and taking money from you to say there are starving children in Africa. We must take money from you in order to feed these starving children. Trust us, we'll totally do it in an efficient way. Wink, wink. And it won't end up being given to princes or other rich people and totally not trickle down, whatever it may be. Even if it was done effectively, even if it was perfectly done, right? We would say that that is invalid because it requires that you violate the rights of that person's property, that you go to them and by threat of violence steal from them their wealth and their labor in order to fund this thing. But if you personally want to feed that child, there's nothing wrong with that. And all, like, we can't say, we can't invalidate that, but we also can't invalidate via an act of aggression and argumentation ethics, you not feeding the child, which means I can't use violence against you. I can't put you in prison, and I can't use the power of the state or whatever to say you didn't feed that child. Now you belong in jail. What I can do is I can say you're a shitty dude and I don't want to hang out with you and I don't want to do business with you because I know you're a shitty dude. You see what I'm saying?
Sure. Let's follow this out because I kind of see where I could play out a hypothetical that I feel most people would argue, and then I'm wondering where you're going to take it, basically. So
go ahead.
Let's pretend we're fucking Vosh's Coconut Island, right? Okay. So there's there's 6 fucking people. One of them is the person who shows up first. And he says, "Hey, listen, I know how to collect coconuts in a super efficient way that's going to make us all survive, et cetera, et cetera. But we have to sign a contract where I'll teach you my methods. But after I teach you my methods, you got to I'll give you enough to sustain yourself, and then I take the rest. Okay. Now through this at this time." Voluntary contract, because the only thing that is affecting these people is just the environment, just hunger. That's the only thing that's affecting them, which is going to affect everybody all the time. So they basically sign this contract in perpetuity, and they basically agree to this distribution of affairs. A few years go down the road. They're all collecting coconuts. They're only getting sustenance. They now have kids and families and shit. There's a starving kid right there. And the guy who has the fucking coconuts basically says, "Hey, you signed the contract. I didn't say shit about your kid. This is my property per our original agreement. And I'm not going to fucking give you enough in order to sustain your kid. And frankly, I don't give a fuck if your kid starves. Feed him out of your fucking lot, figure it out." And on top of that, Frank over here, if you try to violate my property, if you try to take my surplus coconuts, I'm going to have Frank fucking crush your goddamn skull, because that's an act of defense, not an act of offense. And if you take my property or you try to threaten me with violence, then at that point, I'm just doing self-defense. How are you going to deal with that? Because this literally, like,
Frank bashes your head in.
Well, Okay, right. And so
That's how we deal with that.
I'm happy you jumped on that without hesitation. So I was going to say society, the community says we're going to appoint Steve, and Steve is going to make sure that we have enough coconuts to feed our family. And Frank, if I try to beat up the owner, or if I try to steal shit, or if I try to beat up Frank, then Steve is going to come kick my ass. But Steve is going to make sure that I have enough to fucking eat and sustain my family, while that guy over there still makes shitloads of fucking coconuts. Like so this is kind of where we're at
you're a leftist,
now.
Right? This is why you're a leftist, right? Because you're looking at like surplus value, which is like a Marxist analysis. That's what you're doing. You're creating a Marxist analysis of surplus
profit
value
and capitalist
saying,
analysis.
No. Yeah, it's surplus, right? Like, is that like you're looking at the fact that it's inherently exploitative? This is a Marxian analysis that you're doing, right? So you're 100% giving me your analysis via Marxism and communism. Welcome to becoming a communist. Right. Okay. Right. Exactly. Which would make you, I feel like, wouldn't be that crazy for me to call you a lefty if you're saying, well, I mean, communist analysis isn't wrong.
Can we pause?
Let me deal with the analysis.
Can I pause real quick? The reason why I would give you pushback on this is because communism and socialism are solutions, right? So communism is like a moneyless, stateless, classless society that we have in a post-scarcity world, and socialism,
they're prescriptions. I wouldn't call them solutions.
Okay, sure, whatever. And then socialism is supposed to be decommodification of basic human need and workers owning the means of production. I hate both of these. I think they're fucking stupid. I think they're utopian. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're counterproductive. They're not in line with nature or human society. So I understand. So, and then there's also a difference between descriptive and prescriptive. Descriptively, I can agree with Marx that you're a fucking dick and you should give enough coconuts to your fucking worker. Not you specifically. The guy who has 10 billion fucking coconuts should give enough coconuts to his coconut harvesters that his kid doesn't starve to death. I can agree with Marx on that, while still not thinking communism and socialism are the next step.
Right. But that's, I just wanted to point out that I wouldn't be that crazy in saying that your philosophical way that you interpret things is sometimes leftist if you then give me like a surplus value Marxist interpretation of the situations. What I would say
exists in
is
your
that the
words
hypothetical
too, right? Profit.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing as what you're describing. What you're describing is like the positive rights of these new individuals to be able to eat and the inherent exploitation of their labor based off of a previous contract that they voluntarily signed, and that surplus value of their labor needs to be redistributed so that everyone can be able to survive.
I'm a little stoned. I think you're inferring a lot from a couple of words, but it's okay.
I don't think I am. But anyways, let me actually make my argument against your analysis, right?
Sure.
So the problem with your analysis is you say, let's fast forward a couple of years. Dude, a lot of shit happens in whole families and children, right? When we fast forward a couple of years, what you have is you have one private property owner that homesteaded the island. He was there first, right? He knows an efficient way of getting coconuts. He understands the island. And then a second plane crash happens like a year or two later. He's been living on this island. It's his island. He's got a whole system. And now a whole bunch of people show up and he says, this is my island, but you know what? I could use some help, right? I'm going to sign up a contract, right? And teach you all the ways that I've done shit in my property that I own, right? Well, over time, the island grows, right? And families start to occur and people have children. And yet this one private property owner over the years has not renegotiated any contracts, has not tried to figure out anything. Instead, what he's tried to do is be somewhat authoritarian in the usage of his own private property, which is his right to do so. And you say, well, it's starting to cause all of this conflict because people don't have what they need to sustain themselves. And what you're saying is that my system says that my moral system says that these people can't steal from the man, right, that signed the voluntary contract, and that he has a right to defend that property. And I agree. But the situation is that this is not a rational situation for him. We're dealing with an irrational actor. And so while it doesn't behoove him, it's not in his interest to engage with people in this way. And while yes, it is wrong to steal from this person. It's a very hyper kind of situation that you're drawing out. The problem is what happens when we take these ideas in a Piagetian stance to the greater society, and what you get is you do get communism, right? What you get is the idea that some people have more wealth and that some people are doing really well demands that we take some of what they have for the greater community. What you just gave me was a justification for welfare, for enabling poverty, for the slowing down of the economy. You just gave me via your small analysis, once you bring it to the nation state level, a justification for socialism. And the reason is because your philosophical framework that you use was a Marxian analysis. And what I'm saying is, yeah, you might not like it, but the private property owner is sovereign over his property. He signed contracts with individuals that came, and then they decided to have children, and they decided to have sex on that property, and they decided to have families, and without any negotiation or anything, brought children into this world. And now they want to use violence to steal from this person and say that they have a right to resources that they did not homestead, and that they utilize the fact that this person had all of that knowledge in the first place. And I would say that that is evil, that their inability to control themselves and their inability that is evil. And what you're doing is you're using a Marxian analysis, when brought out to the larger framework, is just a justification for socialism in our society. And I don't want socialism. You claim to not want it either, but when it gets into the nitty gritty and you create a hypothetical, from a socialist philosophical position. And I think that really keys into the problem, because you're not axiomatically grounded in certain principles that fight against that socialism.
Okay. This is where I'm having a problem, but I think you can at least understand what I'm going to say.
I hope so.
I'm trying to think of how to phrase it in a way that's logical, but doesn't just like affirm what you just said in a way that never mind, I'll just start. So the point being that, like, from you use logic and morality and evil and all that kind of stuff within your framework and all that kind of stuff, and we have different moralities. We just do. And if you want to call it Marxian, if you want to call it fucking socialist, you want to call it whatever, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is,
if you prefer, I can stop saying evil and just say unjustifiable.
I'm not offended. My issue, though, is that I would view the original homesteader as an irrational actor, and and people act like this all the fucking time. So like people in the real world act like this all the time. It's mine. Leave me alone. Like all that kind of shit. And within this thing, let's say that he didn't have any kids. He was getting older. He needed people to take care of himself, et cetera, et cetera. But he was still having this authoritarian grip, and he hired Frank in order to enforce his property rights. And meanwhile, just up the block, there's people who enable his wealth under the original contract, and they're fucking starving. When you said choose to have kids, when you said choose to have a family, choose to have sex, choose to do this, choose to do that, all of these things for me are... I'm not saying like within the realm of like rational control where you can override your base instinct drives, but I would say it's like almost inhuman understanding of human interaction. One of the most important drives that we have as a species is to fucking propagate. So just because some people opt out of it doesn't mean that everybody else has to. And even if there was like like I would say there's a right to fuck and propagate your genes, because it's one of the most base biological drives that drives not just humans, but every living creature on the planet. Too. Okay. So for me, he would be an irrational actor, and it would only be a matter of logic within like a very scarce, narrow hypothetical where they're only on like an acre wide island, that eventually, because he's an irrational actor, he will be deposed by force. And that you can say that's immoral or evil or whatever, but I think that there's also different morals and evils that are occurring with, people basically starving that don't need to starve, people that are dying that don't need to die. And I understand that you're saying that this is like a rawly Marxian analysis, but I don't think it is at all. I think this is like a natural analysis of almost every history or almost every society that's existed throughout history. The whole reason why we've had kings, security apparatuses, knights, nobles, governments, police officers, military, all that kind of stuff, is to attempt to enforce some level of justice and fairness within the frame of like human society. Whether or not they actually achieved it is a different question. But I am saying that's the purpose of, you got Frank, the private property enforcer. I got Steve, the government tax man. And the reason why they've been fighting is for different moral axioms. The entirety of history, not just since fucking Karl Marx.
Right. The different moral axioms, right, is that I believe that private property is sovereign and the right of the individual is sovereign, right? And you believe in positive freedoms. You believe that people have a right to healthcare, or they have a right to food. They have a right to shelter. And then if other people have the capacity to give them that right, they cannot deny their own property. They cannot deny their own land. They cannot deny their own wealth without giving people certain rights. And so my question is, where do you draw the line in that? Because what this is this becomes an arbitrary line, right? It's not, once you open Pandora's box and say that you have a right to steal, you have a right to aggression against the sovereignty of the individual and private property, then that becomes a negotiated line with the leftists. That becomes a negotiated line with the communists. First, it's people have a right to this. Then all of a sudden, it's people have a right to a home.
Status,
yes,
too.
Well, you are a status, yeah.
I am a statist, but I'm just saying there's plenty of capitalist statists who would also negotiate this line.
I wouldn't call them necessarily capitalists. I would say that that they like the idea of a mixed market economy that is part socialist and has a market economy that they like to call capitalism.
Okay. Yeah, then I think we're operating with different words, but that's okay as long as we understand the definitions. So
like my definition of capitalism would be the ownership of private goods, the ownership of which is determined by homesteading and voluntary transactions, where the distribution of commodities, price, and production are determined by a competitive free market. Once you have the state involved in that, and once the state is involving like regulation and socialist policies and stealing wealth and property from people, that's no longer capitalism to me.
Okay.
That's just saying I like capitalism whilst negotiating with leftists and their philosophy to erode capitalism towards the eventual annihilation of Western society and all those institutions that you love once the revolution occurs.
Okay, so even fuck, I'm not trying to be rude with this. I'm just trying to fucking point this out. Would you say that most people within our society today would agree with either your definition of capitalism or how extreme it is or the solutions? So for instance, like my argument here, I know it's like an appeal to consensus or whatever.
I don't think I mean, the ignorance of the masses of proper education of philosophy and terms and economic theory is not like an argument for the validity one way or the other. I would just say that they're wrong.
Okay. So and then the only reason why I'm doing this is just because like I feel like I'm arguing with and not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to say like you have a perspective that I think that most people who identify as capitalist, you don't agree are capitalist, but the most people who identify as capitalist, even by your definition, they would be leftist because they agree to some level of statism.
Let me maybe like throw you a little bit of a thing, and that kind of showcases the problem with that definition and the lack of, if you will. So let me engage from the leftist perspective, lack of utility of that definition, right? Most people would say that like Sweden and Denmark are capitalist societies. And then they would say that the UK is a capitalist society. And then they would say America is a capitalist society. And some of the more left-leaning people would say that, China, for example, is state capitalism. Right. And once you start taking all of these economies that are wildly different in the way that their markets are run and the way that the regulations are enforced, I think what you realize is that the definition has been watered down to such a degree that capitalism basically means any market economy that isn't controlled exclusively by the state or
Sure.
where the workers don't own the means of production, which is kind of dangerous because the very term capitalism is a Marxian term to begin with, right? It's a pejorative that we've lovingly embraced.
Based. So the fucking. All right, so we kind of did hit on a moral conundrum that we're just going to fundamentally disagree on, but this is because I'm bringing other things to the table besides logic. So, for instance, like biological drive, sex, the required food for consumption, all that kind of stuff. This is where it's going to get into
Positive rights, leftist positive rights. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you actually said rights. I actually think that there are natural rights that are different from like state given rights. So what I mean by this is like a zebra. No, but I mean I'm serious. Like even if we kept it with humans, like a jaguar or a fucking mountain lion or some shit attacks you, you have the right to defend yourself against that living creature and take its life if necessary in self-defense. Also,
absolutely,
in order to survive, I'm not saying like theft is authorized, but you have the right to try to create sustenance and productivity for yourself in order to survive and all that kind of stuff. Now, these rights can be taken away from you at any given time by nature, like we were talking about,
or just by power.
Hurricanes, predators, power, all that kind of stuff. All these,
or leftists.
Yeah, all of these things can be taken away relatively arbitrarily, which is why I kind of put conscience and self-defense within the natural right category, because you have a right to your own mind. Whatever passes within your own fucking ears is yours to control. And then
that is the foundation for libertarian philosophy.
Well, but then you're not going to like me here. What I would say is these are like the two natural rights that I can think of off the top of my head. But then when it comes to like the rights of the state or whatever, you're right. There are things that I think would be good if a society enabled you to get them, and that you can appeal to a utilitarian good that you could actually analyze through like statistical study and all that kind of shit.
Can you name one?
Design. Yeah. So for instance, like I don't think people have a right to housing. But I do think that if you create like a good incentive structure for everybody to have a home, you can actually create a healthier, happier society.
How do you do that?
How do you do that? Probably by building fuckloads of fucking houses and trying to sell them to people and shit within a market economy.
How and who's building those houses?
Mexicans.
Okay. So the problem it seems like you're going to avoid the trap that I'm attempting to lay. So I'll just walk you down
Hold
this.
on. Fucking Andrew wasn't paying attention when I said this.
It seems like he lagged out for a second.
Oh no. We fucking lost him
crashed?
when I was being racist. God damn it. I did that for him.
Oh, no. Is his stream crashed?
His might be. I'm live.
Is anybody on YouTube?
Oh, he died.
No.
All right. Well, I'm still live on my end if you want to keep going.
Yeah, I'm still live on my end too. I just want to make sure. I want to see if his stream crashed. I don't know if he has to like DM us. So just, I guess, keep paying attention to your DMs.
Oh, there he is.
Hey, you're back.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Dude, I did a fucking racist joke and then you fucking dropped off.
He did.
Well, why is that? I don't understand. Why would that be something that stopped for me?
It didn't stop for you. It's just I literally said that shit and then you dropped off and I was like, damn, I thought I would have got at least a fucking chuckle out of that from fucking Andrew.
Was the joke?
So Fabian asked me. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I asked you. I said, well, who's going to build those houses? Because you said that it would be better from a utilitarian perspective. Right, to give housing to certain people or to create the market incentive.
Hold on, let me catch him up on the racist joke, man. So hold on, give me a second.
So who builds the houses?
Right, yeah. And then when he said who builds the houses, like we were walking down like a very straightforward logic train, and I was like Mexicans, and he's going for like the 8-head or 200 fucking gigabrain IQ shit. But yes,
it's very simple.
Now that you've explained the joke, I fucking hate it, and it's stupid.
Yeah, it was funny
and
at the
you
time.
just,
where's Pedro? He'll fucking love it.
But see, here's the real problem, right? Is that you affirmed the right of the individual and exclusivity of the control of their body, right? And by doing that,
not to their body though.
Already,
not to their body, to their brain, to their conscience. Yeah, what's inside their
So
head?
so you believe that they have a right to their conscience, but not a right to their body. So
Correct.
how many people would you enslave to, let's say, feed 1,000,000 children?
1,000,000 children. Well, I mean, can I
If
feed?
there's a
Can I
million
feed a
starving
billion?
children, well, let's just say 1,000,000. There's 1,000,000 starving
Okay.
children, right? How many black people are you willing to put on the plantation in order to get that to happen?
If this is like absolutely a raw hypothetical, like yeah, like a fucking few hundred, few thousand. I mean, we do this all the time on our planet right now.
Exactly. And I would say that that's unjustifiable. That's wrong. That you don't get to enslave people in order to feed other people. You don't get to say that you can, and this is again why I'm saying, like, philosophically, this is left wing, right?
But you also understand that these are happening in some of the least governed places on the planet, right?
No,
Where
America.
people only
How
have
many people are we
themselves.
willing to enslave? Because I
Well,
would say there's currently 350 million enslaved people via taxation. It's a form of slavery.
okay. I don't agree with this assessment, but like, so for instance, like just as an example, right? The Congo, or okay, you can call this evil in a second. I just want to demonstrate this for the audience.
Mhm.
Like, let's say in the Western Congo or Libya or some shit, there's somebody who's producing plastic or diamonds or fucking cobalt or lithium or some shit. These people don't have any other choice but to work in order to survive. They're at the mercy of
Mhm.
people who control the land and have absolute right over the property. They get less than
Well, they don't have
subsistence.
absolute right.
They have whatever the fuck you think they have. The fucking sovereign
don't.
fucking.
No, they don't.
You think a fucking Congolese warlord doesn't have fucking absolute right over his fucking property?
Obviously not. It was stolen via aggression. Name a conflict medal right now today that wasn't stolen via aggression and violence and was imposed on those
So
people.
so he
They
would have
have every
had to
right
have
to-
homestead the fucking property first before he had less than subsistence
purchased
wages on
it.
the.
Or purchased it.
Okay.
Can you name any conflict resource that's being mined that is where those individuals are doing so freely and that it's a voluntary transactions? I don't
No,
think you
probably
can.
not. No, it's all conflict. Yeah.
But why
It's
do
all
you
war.
why do you disagree that taxation isn't a form of slavery? On what grounds do you disagree with that?
Yeah, so for instance, like I have to steal probably a weaker argument, but still the only one that I've heard that makes even a remote amount of sense. So number one, most people or a decent chunk of people pay, well, actually, let me phrase this. Okay. Within this framework, there are people who work and don't work. So there are children and the elderly who don't work under the system because they're subsidized by everybody else. And so if you were to say that they were compelled in order to fucking do something on a day-to-day basis, no, they're not. They're being given something that doesn't compel them at any
What do you
time.
mean?
And there's
Why
entire
why would I
there's
say that I would compel old people or children? I don't understand how that's a
I'm
Can you
saying
back
that
up
there's different
and
there's
explain why
different
you disagree?
classes. Yeah, there's different classes of people within a taxation structure. The people who get like welfare benefits or Medicare or Medicaid or fucking retirement or early childhood education. These people aren't being compelled under the system into any kind of action except for maybe participating in the system when they're in middle age. And then when they're participating in middle age, there's an entire class of people there who don't participate in the system productively. They're not
But what does that
slaves.
have to do with the people? What about the other people that are enslaved in order to do that? And most of the old people have been enslaved via Social Security and taxation before they got to that age to begin with.
Right. So this would be the destiny
And
argument that I'll say.
they're also paying taxes when they buy products. Like, are these people
Hmm.
surviving without going to the grocery store?
No, but I
paying
wouldn't
taxes,
necessarily
they're enslaved.
see. Well, at what point does it become voluntary, friend? And then and let me just finish this. Also,
When you
there's
don't,
there's
when
a
you don't use
service.
violence and you don't steal in order to gain the state power that you have, and you
These
do
are
voluntary
very
transactions,
strict.
that's
These
when
are
it's
like
not slavery.
these are like crazy strict definitions that almost no society on the planet has ever abided by. But I just want to make one more point. There are services that are
I agree.
guaranteed. Yeah. Okay. There are services that are
Doesn't invalidate the argument.
Sure. Okay, fine. Then if by your definition of slavery, everybody who's been in any kind of society whatsoever where non-voluntary taxation was involved and then services were rendered, they were slaves, but they also yielded social benefits from their slavery. Like a functioning security apparatus and fire and EMS
see,
and fucking all that shit.
So the
and welfare
problem here,
subsidization.
right?
Mhm.
The problem here is that you're saying that because good things were produced via the slavery, it is
Sure.
okay for the slavery to occur. So I want to take that into two different forms of analysis, right? So by saying, so what you could say is that black people, you could make the King Cotton speech, right, during the Civil War, where he says that northern black people that work in markets, if they're damaged, right, if they lose a limb in the factories and things like that, they're actually not taken care of as well as the black slaves in the South, because we actually give them health care and we take care of them. We take care of their families. So you would actually agree with the Southern plantation owners that because they take better care of their slaves than the free market capitalist system that they're kind of semi-producing and semi a part of, that doesn't have welfare systems in the North, that the Southern slave owners are actually more compassionate because of their care. I would disagree with that because I think slavery is wrong. But
Well,
more
hold
so,
up, hold up. So let's actually break this down a little bit, because I get that that might be a functional dunk in any other thing, but I'm gonna follow this through. Okay, if there are people in the North, okay, let's travel back to 1864 or some shit, and I'm not saying this is actually what happened historically. I'm just saying
1860.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So let's say that this is reality. Okay. Let's just say that everything that I say for the next 2 fucking minutes, even though it's not real, let's pretend it's real for a second. If there was a society in the North that was heavy industrial, that had less than subsistence wages for its people, and basically treated them like fodder, sent them down into the coal mines, sent them down into heavy machinery, all that kind of stuff. They lopped off limbs. They fucking let them breathe in coal mining dust. They fucking made them breathe in lithium and sulfates and all that kind of bullshit. Scorched their goddamn lungs, paid them less than subsistence wages, and then took their fucking corpses and threw them along the side of the road. And they said, fuck you. This is a free negotiated system. You work for less than subsistence wages. I contractually don't owe you anything. Eat a dick. I hope you starve and die. And then there was a fucking Mary Poppins version of slavery where this guy literally owned people, but he gave them fucking lollipop candy and licorice every fucking day, and the work hours were 3 hours a day, and they got food, and they got shelter, and they got health care, and they got dental care, and they got fucking retirement, and they had early childhood education, and their kids were doing well, and they had fire and EMS, and they weren't being brutalized. And that was the fucking two goddamn situations. Yeah, you're goddamn right. The latter is better than the former. Like that's actually like a weird hypothetical.
The former assumes a certain level of slavery in it, right? So what you did is you said they were given less than subsistence wages. So how is it that they were able to negotiate those things via less than subsistence wages?
Because people are stupid and irrational. And they need to eat, so they'll do whatever the fuck they need to in order to eat.
Well, if they need to eat, right, then they're getting subsistence wages, right? First and foremost,
you don't hold up.
If they're working voluntary jobs, right, and the entire process is voluntary, right, and there's no government taxation, then what you can see this in Black Rednecks, White Liberals with Thomas Sowell and things like that, that when left out of by the government, that many black societies in the 1940s and the 1930s were doing far better without the government interference. And so when you say this example that you give, right, is that there's this massive atrocities and exploitation of their labor by the entire society, and that they're not paid enough to survive, and yet they're voluntarily doing the jobs. Again, time and time again, as you set up your analyses, you use a Marxian analysis in trying to set up these hypotheticals.
Just say fucking left-wing fucking analysis or some shit. I don't and by the way, like, the fucking point that I would have made as a counterpoint was fucking 90 goddamn seconds ago. You can say Marxian and socialism and communism all the fuck you want, but you have a niche definition of capitalism that excludes 98% of the fucking people that function in the society. You have a slavery definition. Hold on.
Has no utility.
I think it serves plenty of fucking utility. 98% of the fucking population uses my goddamn definition. Less than 2% use yours. And then fucking hold on. I'm not done. I'm not even close to done.
The appeal to authority that most people use a definition that describes every goddamn form of market economy that isn't like full-blown Stalinism or communism does not give it any fucking utility because it doesn't describe anything. All it describes
Except
is
for
not
private ownership of the
Stalinism
fucking
or
means of
communism.
goddamn production, which is actually like a relatively good thing to know. Does the state own it? Do individuals own it?
Do
Is
you
it
own
group
your
ownership?
house?
Is it a cooperative? I own it along with the fucking bank. I have a mortgage.
And along with the government that charges you property taxes. You
Okay,
don't own
something
it.
that
We don't have
something that I
capitalism.
do. Okay,
If
fuck.
we use your
Anyways,
definition of capitalism, then it isn't capitalism. People just say it is because we have an illusion of private property.
people own has everything to do with fucking business relations. What the fuck are we talking about here?
Try and
anyways,
start a business without paying taxes. You don't have private property in this country.
that is a fucking wild take. But anyways, I want to back up the fucking
True
something.
one.
Okay, let me back up. The point being that you're bringing up like all these fucking horrors of like I don't even think you've actually brought up the horrors of like socialism or communism or how I could fucking address them in order to get these dismissed. Here's part of the problem with the conversation.
What?
Hey, am I the only important person here now?
Yeah,
Okay.
apparently it's just you.
Okay, I'll be the only important person for a minute. So basically my frustration with this fucking shit is like, goddamn.
I literally
you
have
fucked
no
me up by
fucking
throwing me on
clue.
screen. I was like, dude, he's preparing me for like an epic fucking patent speech, and all I got is just fucking bitching.
Yeah, I literally have no clue. It just bugged
All
out.
right, well, I don't have a patent speech. All I fucking have is
I mean, we can talk about the horrors of communism if you want, but I feel like we'll agree.
Yeah. So basically what I was going to say earlier though, you were talking about like me kind of biting the bullet from a Marxian analysis perspective or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's because my frame includes like human well-being as like a fundamental thing. Like I think that we're born on this fucking planet. We have limited lives. We have biological fucking functions that are required in order to get by. Oh yeah, I remember exactly. Dude, you're acting like there hasn't been worse than slavery conditions in free markets. Like the fucking sugar plantations. Yeah, the fucking coal mines in the 19th century, or the lithium mines in the fucking 19th century, or phosphates down in Florida.
Those aren't free markets.
So you can dismiss all of industrial activity for all of human history because they didn't exist outside of power frameworks. What does that fucking say about your analysis if it hasn't existed in all of history?
Name a free market. I can name probably only one, which would be the
Yeah,
Republic
you got
of
you.
Kospaya
I was about to say you have that.
1440 to
Yeah, you have that one
Fuck
example.
The Republic of Kospaya.
Fuck the Republic of Kospaya.
Republic of Kospaya.
It's like
But see,
300
no,
motherfuckers
you wanna
for
stretch-
60
no.
years in the middle 1400s
I'm
that
gonna
existed
pin you to
between
the
three
fucking
rival
wall.
military
I'm
powers.
gonna pin you to the fucking wall.
I
because
don't
you
agree
say
at
that
all, but
these
I'll
things
listen.
You say that these things occur under a free market. So you don't even want to use the capitalism definition that has no utility. You want to use free market, which is basically my definition of capitalism, right?
Fuck if you want to call it
And then you
capitalism
want
or
to
free
say that
market,
these
as long as
things occur
definitionally
under
we're
these things.
okay.
But the problem is that you're describing times when the state exerted massive control, that police were moonlighting and beating the shit out of individuals that were protesting so that
You
they could
think
have
they couldn't have
better-
found
that they
private
could have-
cops? The Pinkertons were fucking private.
And what happened during those things? The president
People
put
fought
mail
back?
on train tracks. The president put mail on the train tracks so that they could then bring in the National Guard to stop these protests, because the corporations in the state were working together to violate the free market principles and violate people's rights. They did not have the ability to voluntarily negotiate for their wages because we did not have a free market. Instead, we had a nation state that was imposing low wages on people by giving monopolies and exclusive control to the corporations that were fucking working with them and that they were getting rich off of. The same thing was occurring leading up to the Civil War, where you had something known as the paper railroads and northern politicians that owned all of these industrial positions were working in the government, and many of them were the government, so that they could give themselves pseudo fucking fake bank loans and use the power of the state to get all kinds of money that was then extracted from taxation in the South. Like, you're not talking about a free market. It's just that there's just not a free market. So to then say
hold
that
up.
it's a free market,
I want to address that.
Is not a fair attack.
I want to address that, but I want to ask you another question first. How do you feel about unions? How do you feel about workers collectively bargaining for conditions and wages that work for all of the people within an industry?
If they're voluntary, I have no problem with unions.
Okay, based. Then the fucking
I have a problem with public sector unions for the
That's
record,
fine.
right?
I
Because
don't
they're
give a fuck.
negotiating
That's
for
fine.
tax dollars which are stolen.
Okay.
So like cops shouldn't have unions, teachers shouldn't have unions.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you're okay with, in general, workers negotiating their fucking wages and working conditions, everything else is kind of moot. So the on one hand, you see how this is like an impossible conversation to argue from, because your economic.
Because I'm right.
No, because your economic system, your pure capitalism, which we discussed, I think, on another conversation, has happened one time in the past 3,500 years in one part of Italy that was between 3 rival military powers for like 50 fucking years. Like, you want to talk about the exception? And what was the population? It was like a few hundred.
Do you like
or some
democracy?
shit?
Do you like the
No, I
Constitution?
fucking hate democracy. Fuck democracy.
Do you
I love
like the Constitution? Do you like American system of government?
Relatively speaking, I think
Okay, so
democracy
the
is
argument-
the worst
The argument
system,
the
except
argument
for all
that
the
you're
other
making,
ones.
right? The argument that you're making would be
Yeah.
anyone in the world when the founding fathers said we're going to
Uh.
create a constitutional republic, and they would say
Okay.
you're arguing for this fucking system that throughout that has never fucking existed, that only existed once. This democratic republic system that's not even the same as your system
Bullshit.
existed in Greece and only in these tiny little fucking
Bullshit.
communities.
Bullshit. I'm calling such hard bullshit.
Okay, so where was
You
a
know where the-
constitutional republic of any massive power beyond that was
Rome!
made in the same way as
In
the founding
Greece
fathers?
and the United Kingdom, all of these fucking places inspired the Constitution of the United States, the fucking
Yes, they
Magna Carta,
inspired
common
them.
law through fucking Rome. You're talking fuck no.
And my
Not
system
even,
is
no,
inspired by the Enlightenment,
no.
by
Listen,
Enlightenment principles and values.
buddy, you say, I feel like I'm pretty quiet when you talk, and I listen, and I try to be attentive and all that kind of stuff. And I know I'm being passionate right now, but I just need
Go
you
ahead.
to hear me
Go.
on this.
Go.
The American Republic is based off of like 3,000 years of common law history. It's based off of a joint civilization of like Greco-Roman history that stretches roughly 1,500 years. It's also based off of English common law that models itself off of the Roman fucking Empire. It's also based off of divine fucking monarchy. Obviously, they banned the monarchy part, but they still based it off of the Magna fucking Carta, which, correct me if I'm fucking wrong, wasn't that like the year 1000 or some shit? To say that the fucking founding fathers shit out a goddamn system that was novel and not comparable to fucking anything is ahistorical as fuck.
I didn't say it was founded upon nothing, right? I could make the exact same
but it wasn't
argument of anarchism.
novel.
What do you mean the constitutional republic
only
and
thing
liberal
was- the only
democracy
thing that
was
was
not novel? What kind of weird fucking history are you talking about?
Because it was based on the Roman Republic, and it was based off of common law that goes back 3,000
The Roman
fucking
Republic
years.
that had a Caesar. When did the Senate have full control over Rome?
Do you want me to fucking Google that? Because I can look up when the Republic existed.
When did the
Sure.
Senate have full control over the Republic of Rome?
It wasn't the Senate. They also had the fucking consuls. You know, Caesar wasn't a title always. It became a title
I know
after
that
the
Caesar
guy
wasn't
named
a title
Caesar.
always.
Yeah, you know they were well like fucking 1,000 years into their fucking civilization before Caesar became a thing, right? And that they had kings
And
for
did they
like
have a
500 years, and then they had a
constitution?
republic for
Did they have-
500 years.
Did they have?
Yeah,
did
they had
have-
common
did they have-
law.
did-
Yes.
Well, first of all,
And they had a
common law-
Senate.
Common law comes from England. Common law comes from England.
No, it's not. No, it doesn't.
No, there's
No, it doesn't.
there's
This is
Napoleonic
wrong.
law and English common law.
No,
If you
I've
want- if,
studied
like,
Greco.
sorry.
No, I've studied Greco-Roman history and I've studied English fucking
What
law.
part- what
English
part
law
of-
was based
okay,
off of
what-
Greco-Roman
What
law.
part? So you think American law, common law, right, is based off English
of
common
Roman
law.
republicanism, which is based off of English common law, which is based off of Roman common law. 100%.
Okay, but
I
so
would bet
what
my
you're saying-
testicles
what you're
on
saying,
this.
What you're saying is, right, is that something can have similarities to other things in the past,
Sure.
and that invalidates the argument that it would be a novel concept for the founding fathers to create the constitutional republic that they created, but that I couldn't use the same analysis of anarchism, which is the original attack that you used against me, despite there being the Icelandic Tane system, the Republic of Kospaya, despite there being other anarchist communities, despite the
Yeah,
Roma,
can I explain the
despite
difference?
examples of polycentric government in Austria, despite the Iga Sukokoiki, all of these other different variations that we see
Yeah.
proto-anarchist and anarchist communities.
Yeah, can I explain the difference?
Yeah, please explain how one is an argument and refutation against me and this one isn't.
Okay, sure. No, well, you're doing the fucking logic thing. Let me explain why I think there's a fucking material difference. You have half a dozen to a dozen examples of why your system has existed in the past and could exist in the future. Okay, fine. I'll concede that logical part of the argument, okay? But here's my fucking problem. All the societies that you were talking about were weak, decentralized, random, and oftentimes in the middle of other major powers that the second the fucking other major powers showed up, they got fucked over. The systems of power that I'm talking about have about 3,500 years of history fucking backing them, were always powerful in their own fucking rights during their heyday, and on top of that, governed societies made up of millions of people, even in pre-medieval society. So, like...
So your argument is might makes right? Like I thought we were talking about morality and whether or not your philosophy was leftist.
There's a shitloads of different kinds of morality, and you're like, this is like you arguing that a fucking Hot Wheel is compared to a fucking actual functioning Ferrari. Like
no, it's not. I reject that weird hypothetical.
The scales of function and power are like off the fucking charts. Like you're using like a fucking farm like co-op of a few hundred people and comparing it to the Roman Empire. These things aren't comparable.
Okay, first of all, I don't know why they can't be comparable because they're different forms of government. Second of all, the Republic of Cospaya exists today. I mean, sorry, the Chiron, Mexico exists today with like 11,000 people at minimum.
Yeah, so
they're doing great.
Yeah, so it's comparable in the way that like a sugar ant can be compared to a fucking scorpion. Like it's fucking they're both insects.
You're rejecting the comparison of being able to say whether or not an ideal is novel because the American Constitution and the American Republic was founded upon some principles that existed in Rome, some principles that exist in English common law, some principles that exist in getting rid of the right of monarchy. Many things like existed is taking elements from other things. Yeah, sure. The American Republic system is also based off of Plato's Republic and having different forms of government. Like you have the oligarchy in the Senate, you have the common people in the House of Representatives, you have kind of the monarchy somewhat represented in the executive, right? Like yes, it's pulling elements from other societies that have worked well and putting them together in what they thought was good, and it was a novel thing. And you're rejecting that by saying, well, I can compare to bigger empires than you, so therefore you're wrong. And you're making an argument of scale, and I think that's fucking stupid and dismissive.
Okay. Yeah, and I think you're right to feel that way. Like I'm not saying that you can't, okay? Maybe in some fucking hypothetical universe where all of us fucking agree that your ideas are correct and then we all sign on for it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 500 fucking thousand years from now. Maybe
hey, you know what? You found the brand. Fabian Liberty. It's about the Fabian strategy. And you would love it because it comes from Fabius, from the first guy that defeated Hannibal, right? Incrementalism. Sweet. That's what I believe in.
Okay. Actually, okay.
Doing things slowly and bringing the market slowly to get us to a better place.
All right, so let me ask that question. Okay, you're right to feel dismissed, and I might be being a little bit of a cunt about it, but I do think that the scales that we're talking about are different, and I don't think about it in my lifetime, maybe 500 years, maybe a millennia or some shit. But the material fucking conditions of humanity are going to be completely different. My question though, so you said this is an intentional part of your philosophy and brand, is that you have esoteric knowledge, basically your definitions of everything, which are correct, that you named yourself after a general who exhausted fucking Hannibal through incrementalism, and this is actually what you're trying to do. Am I understanding that correct?
Well, we stole it from the Fabian Society that stole it from Fabius, which was a socialist organization that argued that slowly, if you increase the size of the state and you give more welfare, that you'll eventually bring about socialism, which I think our history is kind of showing to be true.
So you're trying to do the inverse.
Do the inverse, right?
Okay.
Bring the market, reduce regulation, give us the opportunity to show that principles exist. And as it gets better and better, people's philosophy and minds change and they become more and more open to it. Because I don't think a violent revolution or, like if I could snap my fingers and create anarcho-capitalism today, I don't know, and it wouldn't involve any violence or aggression upon anybody, I would. But I don't think that's a reality of the world that we live in. I think what the reality is that great men plant seeds for trees of the shade of which they will never sit in.
Okay, another base quote. Okay. I'm always down with incrementalism.
Well,
I'm always down.
Hang on, guys, hang on. We're moving into about an hour and a half into the stream. We got some questions. I have a lot of moderator questions. We don't.
I can do a closing.
Yeah, if we want to move into closing, so I can get over to the Q&A. This debate kind of went all over the place. I did enjoy it though. I think it was very productive, like surprisingly productive. Take a minute, make your closing statements. Let's get into the Q&A here, and kind of move on from there. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll open while it's fresh. Yeah. So basically, what I would say is, shit, did I disconnect?
Your camera froze.
Your camera froze.
All right, give me a second. Let me fuck with it. Let me go though. Even if I look retarded, can I still go because it's fresh?
Yeah.
So basically, like, I'm all for incrementalism. I'm also, on an individual level, I'm all for encouraging entrepreneurialism, thinking for yourself, trying to work within like an individualist mindset in order to make the world a better place, being voluntary with what you have, like all that kind of shit. I'm all good with that. I think the reason why I am being dismissive, and I'm not trying to be a dick while doing so, is I feel like the power structures that are currently surrounding us are not going to erode that quickly. And on top of that, I feel like I have to deal with what's in front of me. I did do 4 years in law enforcement. I did do 4 years in the Marine Corps. And as such, I view myself as a student of power. And so what I believe power abhors is a vacuum. So, ideally, maybe 1,000 years from now, if everybody has fucking jet cycles and the fucking jerk-off machine and the computer from fucking Star Trek and shit that just prints food, like, maybe we can be in a society where everybody can chill the fuck out. But at this point in time, with the way power is structured, I just don't see it. And I do stand by my comparison of you using historical examples that governed much smaller societies versus much bigger societies. We're in a currently bigger society, and therefore it demands the power structure that we have right now. But I learned a lot, and it was fucking dope. So, it was awesome, and fuck you at the same time.
Okay, well, while you're fixing your camera, we're going to let Fabian Liberty go ahead with his closing.
Yeah, so the original onus of this debate was me cheekily calling you a leftist. And I think that what I have shown tonight is that you are indeed a leftist philosophically. You use a form of rule utilitarianism as a means of talking about the outcomes. You talk about power. And when you try and trap individuals into moral conundrums, over and over again, you use Marxian analysis as a means of doing so. You openly admit that you will allow for some slavery as a means of giving resources to other people that you feel are more needy, and you recognize positive rights. All of these things are groundings within leftist philosophy, and I think that this makes you not right-wing or libertarian in your philosophy, but instead makes you left-wing. But you believe that you are right-wing, and the reason you believe so is that you say that the institutions that we have are necessary, and that might makes right, and that the reality of the situation is that we can't strive or that we can't immediately do the good because the material conditions on the ground do not allow us to do the good. And instead, you advocate that we have some sort of conversation with the left to accept some of the things that they deem right. I find this very Marcusean in the idea that the state will always get better and that the state will progressively, as it grows, it will get more efficient and it will be more able to give people their rights. And it's okay to violate their rights and it's okay to change their behavior in some regard, so long as the ends justify the means, so long as the material conditions of people are better, so long as the homeless have homes, so long as the people have health care, etc. And so long as people aren't being given subsistence wages and being exploited for their surplus value. All of these things I find to be grounded in leftist philosophy, but you have a certain love and certain values that are very conservative that don't make you go full-blown leftist. You recognize consciousness and you recognize that you have exclusive control over your consciousness, but for some reason you believe that there is a breakdown between that exclusive control of your consciousness but not your body itself. You believe that your body is somehow owed to other people, that your body can be enslaved via taxation so that other people can have positive rights. And this too I find to be a morally unjustifiable position that you engage in a performative contradiction by saying it, but also is just wrong. I don't think that you get to have slavery as a means of giving other people things. If a homeless person shows up at your doorstep and says, "May I come in? My car is broke down. I need your help. I need some food, and I promise I'll leave tomorrow." I would say that it is a moral man that gives that individual his couch. But the problem is that once you start saying that it's morally justifiable that that person must do that, that what you actually do once you take the Piagetian game forward is you enable the homeless, you enable the lecherous, you enable the thieves, and you slow down society and you force altruism as a means of crushing the individual for the collective, and devoiding our society of individual responsibility and devoiding our society of the ability to achieve great things and move forward in the future. So I think that I've made a somewhat decent argument that while you do have some good values and you have some conservative leanings and you're a good faith kind of debater, I think you are grounded in leftist philosophy, and that without things being grounded axiomatically in principles that are important and morals that you can actually justify or say where they come from, that you will eventually lose to the Marxists, that you will not get that incrementalism that we talk that would be based as fuck. Instead, what you will get is incrementalism in the other direction, because you're constantly negotiating with them without a moral framework to back that up. At the very least, the Christians have a deontological position, a line in the sand that says, "Fuck you, no, I will never go beyond this line," because they have a moral framework that fights against Marxism. But as our society loses those things, all of the degeneracy that you don't like to see in society is the very fact that we have lost those moral things. We have lost those groundings. And instead, we're negotiating. And I think in the tradition of the neoconservatives that are supposedly conservative, that's standing on the sidelines and saying, "Stop, please slow down," is not a path towards victory. And that is why I kind of came at you for being a leftist. I'm really glad that we agree on hierarchical structures and the idea that voluntary hierarchy is based. My issue is that your argumentation actually argues in favor of unjustifiable hierarchy. And I think that what you're doing is changing words for the nobility and changing words for the title and the monarchy, and just exchanging them for the rich and the powerful that exploit us via actual violations of our rights.
Gentlemen, that was a surprisingly very good debate. I enjoyed it very much. And I don't say surprisingly as in I'm surprised that, you assholes can debate. Obviously, I didn't invite you here because I didn't think that you could, but because the premise was kind of wonky. But I think that we ended up kind of building off of that into something that was really good. I really appreciate from both of you. We have super chats, but before we get to those, once the closing statements are done here in the Crucible, we consider the debate over. It's over. The moderator can engage with his questions. Sometimes there's a little bit more back and forth. We're okay with that too. But we consider it closed so other people can participate if they want to. Counterpoints, I want to start with you because there was some really strange hypotheticals that were thrown out, and I felt like you bit some really brutal bullets. And I want to go over those. But before I do, where did you get the idea that the common law came from Rome?
Yeah, so basically, there's the Great Courses series on Audible.com. The one of my favorite is the combined history of Greece and Rome, and the other one is the basically like English history from I don't know, fucking 1000 to 1500 and shit. And also just
Can you say that title again?
The Great
Sorry.
Courses series, GREATCOURSES, and then my particular favorite is actually the combined history of Greece and Rome. They teach it as a single history. They don't divide up between the two nations. They literally chronologically follow them all the way through, all the way into Byzantium, which is amazing. And learning Byzantine history was fucking amazing. And then also
Christians are pretty fucking based, aren't they?
I'm not gonna lie, it borderline made me want to convert to being Orthodox. Like I was like, oh shit, like
they're Christians, they're pretty fucking based after
I get
all, aren't they?
I get to have an emperor, and my priest will bless weapons. Yeah, this is fucking. I'm all about this shit. So anyways, the point being that after the Western Roman Empire fell, and as the Eastern Roman Empire was falling, a lot of the great people of medieval history that we think about, like Charlemagne, Charles the Great, who was famous for repulsing the Moors in Spain. A lot of the Reconquista members, a lot of the people.
Don't
in,
lie,
Germany.
you just like Joyous. You just like blessed swords.
True. I mean, I do. Somebody was talking about, if you like Game of Thrones, you like dragons and misogyny, don't pretend that you fucking like actually just like fantasy. And I was like, I love dragons and misogyny. It's fucking awesome. So the point being, no, so there's a narrative through line where Charles the Great against, I believe it was Charles the Great, against his advisors, tried to institute literary programs in France. And he tried to like redo aqueducts and public works and all that kind of stuff. And what he was actually trying to do was he was trying to reinstitute the greatness of Rome within his kingdom. And he actually talked about Rome as a great power with like civics and organization and all that kind of shit. And all of that did go to England, and that's what they based their common law off
It's
of.
been a long time since I've read up on the common law, but I thought, didn't that start with William the Conqueror?
Sure. So most
and wasn't that like a really long time after Rome?
No, it wasn't. So basically what we're talking about, it depends on your definition of Rome, right? We think of the Western Roman Empire
the
as
Roman Empire.
Well, yes. But we think of the Western Roman Empire as Rome, because that's like the thing that collapsed in Europe and a bunch of German barbarians fucking destroyed it and raped everybody and killed everybody and all that kind of shit. That happened in like the 500s. But the truth is that the Eastern Roman Empire lasted all the way up until 1453.
Yeah, we know there was a schism, right?
Yeah.
And we know all about the schism too. I'm just saying that William the Conqueror existed long after the Roman Empire was fell. There's no doubt that's true.
500 years. But at the same time,
that's a long time, man.
it is, but the Eastern Roman Empire was still active at that time, and all of the medieval kings of medieval Europe were trying to emulate Rome's greatness. That's what they were trying to do.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying that's where I remember the English common law coming. I didn't think that its roots were based in Rome proper anyway, not when it was a whole empire.
Well, actually, so real quick,
I could be wrong. I mean, honestly, I could be wrong. That's why I wrote that down, because I want to check it out and see if there's like primary source documents that really actually like connect those two things. But I don't think it changes the argument that like when I say that America was a novel thing in many regards. Yeah, was it based off of history and other things that existed? Yeah, but so is the system that I'm advocating for. The only difference is scale.
And I wanted to concede that point basically, but just to share this though, like a lot of the institutions that maintained like ancient documents and shit were like priests who maintained Roman documents through the medieval period, and it's also the reintroduction of texts from the ancient world through the Byzantine Empire, through translations with the fucking Moors and the Muslims and the Ottomans and shit, translating that and getting it back into Europe. So that's what I'm saying. Like you could say that like
the Dark Ages happened. Yeah,
you could say the Dark Ages happened, and the British are a bunch of barbarian twist-toothed fucking cunts who couldn't fucking lick the boots of the Roman Empire. And I would agree with you. But that doesn't change the fact that when they started constituting their social contract, they looked to Rome for inspiration.
Okay. Moving on to this kind of utilitarian argument. This was something that a bullet you bit kind of early on, which was you were asked, if this would save X amount of people's lives, how many people would you enslave in order to make sure that the food was produced? And you basically said as many as it takes.
I think that was my chat. But what I
You
meant
said
to
a few
say,
hundred or a few thousand.
yeah, I said a few hundred or a
Well,
few
yeah,
thousand.
it was
Yeah.
a few hundred or a few thousand, or fuck as many as it would take.
Yeah, I think I was reading chat for that one. So for
Okay.
me, it would be like a utility calculation, and on top of that, I feel like we do this now when
Yeah,
we're talking.
how do you calculate utility? I'm
Yeah.
just
So
curious.
if you're
I
talking
got
about
headphones, but I'm getting water.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, for me, I would say the healthy, happy functioning of a human life from birth to death as best we can. I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs is probably the best way to do that. It's a psychological concept that basically goes through physical needs, security needs, social needs, ego needs, self-actualization. Self-actualization is where you try to become your best person. I think that society should be geared towards making sure that individuals can self-actualize as much as possible, and we could create a system through the market of material distribution that would basically enhance all of human life to the best people we possibly can be.
Okay, so I think I understand.
Anybody got helicopter emotes for the Piagetian reference?
Yeah, so
Pinochet reference.
I think I understand the top-down reference, and I even understand how it could be possible. But my question again is, how would you actually calculate it? Yes, I understand you could look at a hierarchy of needs. Yes, I understand that you can look at all of these different qualifiers. But what would the actual hedonic calculation be so that you would know that maximum utility was in slavery?
Yeah, so I don't think there'd be like a single metric, but I think you would look at like lifespan, report happiness and purpose reports late in life. You could look at like access to early childhood education, nutrition, academic achievements, sports achievements, like all that kind of stuff, and the access of people to pursue those needs that they wanted to pursue. Also, when people are 0 to 18, we've been talking a lot about compulsion and the state intervening in people's lives. I've arrived at a position where I think that if the state doesn't intervene in young life is going to be fucking terrible. And so I think we should take fitness and education and financial literacy and shop and all that kind of shit. Like I think all of these things should be guaranteed by the state.
Fabian, a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. The first
No, I don't
question that
mind.
I had was, there was a hypothetical that was brought up, and I thought it was kind of interesting, which was, uh, essentially he had laid out a, child who's starving, and you're able to feed the child. The moral imperative there would be that you ought feed the child, so that the
Mhm.
child doesn't starve to death. But if you were to walk away within your worldview and prism, that's a blameless act. Is that correct?
So, what I was saying is that the libertarian ethic of argumentation ethics does not, in my opinion, some people believe that it does not bridge the ought is gap. What it does is it refutes unjustifiable things. It doesn't refute all unjustifiable things. It just refutes some unjustifiable things. And so what I would say is that it's not necessarily a blameless act if you as a society say, I don't like that person did that, right? If you say, I don't want to trade with that person, or even if you, let's say, create your own voluntary society or governance, right? Where you, as a form of contract, say that you have to do that. I would probably not want to live there personally, but you have every right to do so. What it says is that at an individual level and at a macro level, it is wrong to force that person via violence or aggression or theft to give the small child food.
I understand.
Because it's no difference than welfare, right? It's no difference than saying we should all be taxed to feed the poor.
So I think I understand the logic, but if you'd let me just ask a quick follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in argumentation ethics? Are those the ethics that you ascribe to?
Well, I believe argumentation ethics as a form. Hoppe, I think, fucked up by naming it argumentation ethics because it's, in my opinion, not a system, not a foundation of ethics, but instead a system of refuting unjustifiable ethical claims.
Well,
Personally, I
then,
would say
do you
I'm
have another?
probably a
Do you have another
virtue
ethical
ethicist.
system? Okay,
I would
virtue
say
ethics.
I
Okay.
would say that's a shitty person, and I don't like that person, and I don't want to have anything to do with that person that wouldn't take bread in their pocket and feed a starving child on the side of the road. And I would say that that's a piece of shit, and I wouldn't do business with them, but I wouldn't steal from them. I wouldn't use violence against them. I would let everybody know, hey, that guy's a piece of shit. Don't deal with him. Like, that guy won't even feed a starving kid. Like, you can't trust that guy. That guy's going to commit fraud against you. Like, don't do business with that guy.
So let's say for a second that I ran over and stole a piece of bread from that guy and gave it to the child. You think that I did an immoral act?
Yes.
So for me, it's kind of weird because there has to be some justification or delineation with reason still, right? Like, don't you think that reasonably most people would give me a pass on that and say, we totally and completely understand, and we don't really feel like you did anything wrong?
So, first of all, the appeal to reason here is a bad one because it's still theft and it's still aggression against that other person, right?
Yeah,
What you're doing is
I'm not really denying that. I totally
what
agree that
right.
a theft occurred in this time of thing, but I think what Counterpoints was kind of alluding to was that, look, if somebody had run in that picture and they grabbed a piece of bread off this asshole who wouldn't feed the kid because let's say he's the only one around with some food for whatever reason, and then took it over to the kid and told the guy to go fuck himself, and then he reported it as a crime, I would kind of want the magistrate to give him excuse him from that. Don't you think most people would?
I would say what most people would is an appeal to,
Consensus.
popularity, right? I would say no. I don't care about whether or not most people would or wouldn't. What I would say is that if you want to steal bread from someone to feed that child, you should accept that that's a criminal act of theft. That even as a Christian, right? Like, thou shalt not steal, right?
We
Like,
give
you
him a
should accept,
pass.
right? If your society wants to give them a pass, I would say that that's morally unjustified. At the same time, I also
I'd say letting the kid
wouldn't.
die would be the morally unjustified thing in
At the
that
same
They
case.
both
time,
are.
at the same time, right? Two wrongs don't make a right. If even if you think one is a moral ought, right, and the other isn't. But what I would say is you go to court and you say, yeah, the bread costs 20 cents. I accept I'm a criminal. Here's your 20 fucking cents for your bread, you fucking asshole. Guess what? I'm never doing business with you again. And then
Yeah.
the situation is resolved. The criminal act is resolved. No one's going to fucking hate you for it. No one's going to fucking judge you for it. And restitution has been paid to the victim of the crime. And the victim of the crime was the individual that you admittedly stole from because you thought that there was a higher moral ought. I would still say that higher ordered moral ought is wrong and that it's not justifiable. That you should give your own bread, or you should just or you should take the kid and say, hey, come with me. I'm going to take you to a fucking sit down restaurant, right? It doesn't matter what it is. I don't think that two wrongs make a right, but if you accept your criminality, right, and then you pay restitution, the situation is resolved.
Yeah. So I guess just the last thing that I'll say on this before I move on to my next question is I still think that in that situation, everyone in this room, proverbially, right, in this room, would steal the bread, give it to the kid, tell the guy to fuck off. That's what I think, right? I really
Probably.
do. I think that they would. And so I think that
Probably, and a market justice system would probably there's certain things will be like forced out of the market, regardless of whether or not they're justifiable, right or wrong.
Well, so
right?
I just think that lends some credibility to the fact that if we all would, that it lends some kind of credibility to the fact that maybe we should be very careful about this type of moral prescription. If within hypotheticals, which granted are a bit unreasonable, we say that we would act different than what we would consider moral. I just think that
I wouldn't steal a penny to save the world. I wouldn't steal a penny to save the world, or at the very least, I would recognize that it would be wrong to do so. That it's still theft. What you should do is the same. It's essentially another form of a trolley cart problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I approach it much the way a virtue ethicist does, which is like ignore the fucking stupid hypothetical and just try and fix the problem without doing something you know is wrong, right? The kid is starving, grab the kid and take the kid somewhere or feed the kid in some way. Don't steal from someone else. It's basic kindergarten, right? Like two wrongs don't make a right. Just because you want to feed the kid and you think that the kid needs to be fed doesn't mean you get to steal from someone else in order to fix it. Find another way to fucking fix it. Stealing's wrong. It's just period.
Okay. Appreciate that. And then my next question to you is, what's that island called again? The island of what is it?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know, that fucking the libertarian fucking ANCAP paradise, Ancapistan, the island of it starts with a C.
Oh, the Republic of Kospia?
Yeah, the Republic of Kospia.
Cospia. It's an interesting case of it's an interesting case where basically the Papal States and Florence did a treaty on like boundaries. And
Yeah, I read up on it after
Yeah.
a previous debate we had. Just the name eluded
cool.
me for a second, mostly because I like to just hear you
don't
like
care.
rant about Kospia. I think it's kind of funny. But how many people?
Why do you think my camera is angled up? I'm just jerking it right now. Just
That's right.
Kospia.
How many?
Oh god.
How many
selling
fucking
tobacco?
people-
Yes.
How many people lived there again?
Couple hundred.
Couple hundred people. I kind of wondered because you did bring this up as an example. And you think that's like a really small segue for us to make any determination on any broader societal prescription period, almost anywhere on planet Earth?
Well, the question is, right, the question is what is right and wrong, right? And then what we do is we attempt to look at historical examples to try and see this in the landscape, because the leftist is not concerned with what is right or wrong. What the leftist is concerned with is empirical, social data that is empirical, even though it's not really, it isn't, because you can't do that. You can't really do that with economics or social systems. But instead, they want an example. They want to see, well, if these principles are true, how have they worked out in the past, right? And they demand that you don't get to test these examples, that instead that it must already have been done, which is already a problem, right? It's like, well, I haven't seen freedom in the past, therefore freedom bad. So we have to search for small cases so that we can try and show similar systems and things. But this is kind of my argument again with the founding of America, is that just because something hasn't been done before doesn't refute it as a good system, right? But it hasn't been done
like
to
how
a
the
large
fucking
scale.
communists point at communes, they have like 300-400 people and they're like, look how base communism is. It fucking works. It's just that we just don't do it on a bigger scale. It's like, isn't it kind of the same?
It's very different. It's very different. So you could look at example of the Oneida community, which was pretty communist in its structure, and it worked pretty well actually. But the difference is voluntary. And this is the real big sneaky thing that communists try and avoid, which is that we're not talking about people voluntarily going to a commune and choosing to live there and choosing to engage in a pseudo heterarchical society. What they're talking about is imposing something that cannot work at a grand scale through involuntary means. And so it's not actually an example that works, because there's a key distinction. And the distinction is whether or not people voluntarily chose to go to the commune, or whether or not they were forced via violence into that system.
Okay, gotcha. Moving on to the super chats. Joe R says, I'm glad both men have beards.
All three of us.
Yeah, I mean, welcome. Joe
you
R
sort of have a beard.
Yeah, I shaved, and it happens.
You're welcome
occasionally.
For my service.
Yeah, I got into a fight with a lawnmower. It was terrible. For another $9.11, more tea than Alec from the last debate. Casimir for $2 says, must CP be enslaved to grow food for his children?
Yes. Yes, literally. I work a job I fucking hate in order to pay the goddamn bills for my fucking kids, and I love them to death, and I would do it for fucking ever. And yes, that is a moral compulsion. I do not have autonomy beyond my responsibility to my kids. I'm sure you can refute it, but I'm not going to.
For $66, which makes this super chat, like almost 60 times more valuable than Casimir's. No, I'm kidding. Casimir, I'm just messing with you. Annuit, what does that say? Annuit
Coeptus?
coeptus on the back of the dollar. Semper Fidelis is the motto of the Marines. Why is this in America when our ancestry is English? I caught this debate at the end. My bad if this is out of context.
It's
Actually, I think it fits pretty
not.
well.
It's fucking Latin,
It's
and
not out of context. No.
yeah.
I'm from Virginia. My state motto is Sic Semper Tyrannis, thus
Right.
to all tyrants, or thus to tyrants. I don't deny that there's, that we have history and we have linkage to other things and that we have ideas. I even made the argument that much of our government structure is kind of around Plato's Republic because, they believe that we needed all different types of government in one government. The presidency kind of being a monarchy, the Senate kind of being an oligarchy, and the House of Representatives kind of being for the common people. Yeah, and I mean, in a lot of ways it was based, but I think we can do better. I think that it hasn't gone far enough towards true freedom.
Yeah, and
right.
if I can just be not like a dick about it, but just kind of point this out, like the reason why we emulate Rome is for good reason. It is the shadow through which all European civilization compares themselves to, good and ill. So it's it's a huge thing.
Joe, we thank you for the very large super chat and for your wondrous donation and your generosity towards the Crucible. Joe R for $9.11 says, teach the kid how to fish, right? Teach the kid how to fish and then he won't starve to death. I think that's what like the overview is. And that's a very Christian response, I would say.
Yeah. And if I can hit this real quick, I think it's society's job to teach people to fish metaphorically. So I think that like you can say like we don't have any responsibilities to each other or it would be better if we did, blah, blah, blah. I am way more strict about it where I think that in order to have a functional society of our scale, we have to say, how do we make sure that adults know how to function as adults in a healthy, happy society? And what are the skills we need to give them? And then how do we give that to them? And once we answer those questions, we'll actually be successful.
Yeah.
I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Fabian. I'm sorry.
I think that's ultimately that's wrong because it's the idea of self-sacrifice morally imposed via violence on other people is the issue. But I think rational people understand that they want to live in a healthy society. And so I have no problem with charity. I have no problem with, default guardians as parents teaching their children certain things. The problem that I have is that once we begin to attempt to justify the illogical position of aggression and theft and violence on others and stop affirming the rights of the individual, what ends up happening is a runaway train towards horrendous things. And we hope that we can like contain it as the conservative, right? And I think that's just not the reality of the situation because the philosophical axioms are no longer there.
Yeah, I like hearing these words like axiom and ethics out of you, Fabian. It's a nice change of pace. Looks like you've been putting your thinking cap on lately and really diving into some of these deep concepts, right?
Whatever.
Love you, Fabian. You guys are great. Thank you guys so much for coming on the Crucible tonight. It really was a productive conversation. Take a minute, Fabian. We'll start with you and shout your channel out one more time.
Yeah, so I'm Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere. YouTube, Rumble, Liberty_Fabian on Twitter. But if you search Fabian Liberty, just look for those beautiful ANCAP colors. But primarily, I'm a Twitch streamer. We do philosophy, we do reactions, we do a lot of debates. But the one thing I don't do is random bullshit drama constantly with other streamers and reacting to other streamers' debates. When we do reactions to debates, we do things like reacting to Soho forum debates and things of that nature. So if you're looking for quality content, hopefully I'm a place for it. Equal parts big brain, equal parts entertainment. Also, we really need YouTube subs.
Yeah, well, I was going to say there's two
please.
things I wanted to mention. The first is that we have an open Discord with Fabian Liberty. We've had it for, I don't know, a long time. And surprisingly, for all of the lunatic Christian nationalists and libertarians on both sides of that, they seem to get along pretty famously. So hop on in there, and I think that you'll have a good time. Make sure that you see Fabian Liberty. You'll find links in our Discord right to his. Also, make sure you get over to his YouTube channel and sub. We want to make sure that we get this guy over 1,000 subs. If he's already got all the view time, let's let him get his damn channel monetized, for God's sakes. Get over there, sub to Fabian Liberty. Counterpoints, go ahead.
Yeah, I do the cringe fucking React Andy bullshit because most people are retarded and they fucking love it. So, you know, if you want some of that shit, fucking come watch my shitty stream. And then also, but I do love debates. I do love these conversations, honestly. Like, when I can hear somebody eloquently put a coherent worldview forward, even if I viscerally fucking disagree with it, like on an instinctive level, I love that shit. That fucking because I feel like you can actually test the ideas instead of the pissing contest on the panels. Although I do miss the panels sometimes. But if you want to check me out,
well, then you're gonna have to come to the Inquisition.
I'm very much down to do so. It'll be fucking wild. But I was gonna say my most popular shit is Warhammer 40K. If you're even remotely curious about science fiction. It's basically, to explain it, take Lord of the Rings, put it into space, make one of the main characters an atheist space Jesus with machine guns that fire grenade launchers who's racist and he loves killing aliens. And that's like the premise. So if you're racist and you love killing aliens and you love grenade launcher machine guns and you love elves with big tits, then you'll love it. So come on by and check it out.
You sound like a fucking coomer. That's what you sound like right now.
Well, that's 'cause he's
I'm a
lefty.
married man.
Rotten,
It's not for me.
Lefty.
It's not for me.
coomer.
I don't even
Like,
see the
fucking
elf tits.
big-breasted elves and fucking racists.
Let's
What channel are you on right now? Are you
Well, I
on
thought I
your
was on a
channel?
right wing. I thought I was on a right wing show
I'm
where
kidding.
hold on, there's like a 50% chance of people having like the fucking like Christian nationalist symbology, or they'll have a fucking anime waifu fucking PFP. So I was trying to get them both. I was trying to get the fucking like Nazi iconography PFPs, and I was trying to get the fucking Coomer anime waifu PFPs. So know your audience.
It's kind of unfortunate that there might actually be a lot of truth to what you're saying on many right-wing platforms that exist right now. Joe R, for the last $9.11 of the night, we appreciate your very generous donations. Says very amiable debate, one for the road. Well, we hope you guys enjoy it. It will be posted right here on the Crucible. Of course, these guys are welcome to post it to their stuff. We don't give a fuck about content, never have. Have a wonderful night. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah.
Real quick, on my YouTube channel, I always post the Crucible debates, but I always cut out the Q&A. So for my audience, if you want the full debate, if you miss part of it, you got to go to the Crucible.
All right, we appreciate that. Gentlemen, we're out. Have a great night.
Catch up. I love that shit. I fucking love that shit. Let's check in with chat. We still got like 60. What do we got? 64 people? Something like that. God, I gotta piss. So, since I have to piss, Destiny's probably gonna rate us in like 15 fucking seconds. So we gotta log out quick before DGG shows up. Is he live? If he's not live, that would actually be a good thing because I would feel fine for fucking signing out without babysitting DGG. And it's not like we have any kind of coordinated thing. He's never DM'd me or anything. I just know it's sweet to have DGG hang out, but I also want to be respectful of your guys' time. And I don't see him live right now, so I think we're going to call it soon. Let's do questions. Scroll to the top, scroll to the bottom, do @counterpoints in the chat. Obviously, go check out all of my Warhammer shit. Go check out all my politics shit. By the way, okay, so if you're a politics dork and you're here and you came here only for the politics stuff and you don't watch the 40K stuff, you have to go watch the political shit and leave a like and a comment and all that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to like chastise anybody, but the way that it's breaking out, 90 to 95% of my views are Warhammer 40K. And I love the political debate scene. I love what we just did. I love writing essays and all that kind of shit. But basically, at this point, I'll just be dead honest. We're probably hitting 40,000 subs, and then we're going to split off. We're going to do one dedicated political channel where I'll post all the essays. We'll still do all the live streams on the main channel, but then the main channel is just going to be Warhammer 40K shit, because like I can't argue with the metrics when literally 95% of my audience engages with 40K and less than 5% engages with politics. You know, I got it, guys. No offense, but this thing, not doing this out of the kindness of my heart. I'm doing this to go eventually full time. Shinobi Homie, there's a Discord link, and I'm gonna scroll to the top. I'm gonna scroll to the bottom. I'm gonna answer all your guys' questions and comments, and then we're gonna do that. So let's go to the top, go to the bottom. That was fun. Fabian and I on panels don't get along, and I knew that he was going to say some wild ANCAP shit, and there's plenty of times that could have gone off the rails, but I was happy that I was actively listening to everything that he was saying and coming back on everything that he was saying. I mean, I still fucking disagreed with it. Mexico will pay for it. Yeah, let's build the wall, boys. He's not here to say the N-word. We'll see. I would say it with an A. I don't give a fuck. Blah, blah, blah. Scrolling. Yeah, no nonsense said, yeah, like, so at this point, money is a fucking, I don't want to say a pyramid scheme, but it's kind of like a deck of cards. Like we're just, it's like Wile E. Coyote running out over the cliff. We're just not looking down at our debt, which when you're a country and you're the richest and most powerful country in the world, and everybody else is in as much debt or quickly getting as close to as much debt as you are, I think we just decided that it's a fucking number, and as long as we have economic activity, we don't really give a fuck. So I think that's what's going on now. Why not just steal from their grain bins, too, while you're at it, TVA included? I mean, I will. If they're starving kids, I'm stealing that shit. He accused Connor of being an ANCAP leftist? No, he just accused me of being a leftist, because I'm a fucking statist. Yeah. And what I would say is, like, so for me, I hate this. So I'm happy he explained his definitions, because I think I would have lost my fucking mind and screamed at him if I didn't ask him for the definitions. But basically, like, in my world, liberal means Democrat, right? It means, like, centrist, normie, blue dog Democrats. Like, they want to be all virtue signally and have black friends and shit, but they don't actually want to pay high taxes. They will pay high taxes in order to virtue signal, but they don't actually want to. Leftists are socialists and communists. So they're online, they're hardcore, they want a revolution, or they want they either want a violent revolution or they want politics to change so much that it's unrecognizable. That's what I think leftists are. And then libertarians, unfortunately, I would be a libertarian if libertarianism wasn't synonymous with anti-statism and anarcho-capitalism. But unfortunately, that term, which I think would have been a good basis for my ideas, is not available. So Burkean conservative is the closest I can get. So, blah, blah, blah. Safuria says that he liked Prime Case panels. Yeah. Yeah, I fucking, Sephirus, I love the Great Courses series. They're so good. They're all like high level fucking college professors. Ericoda asked, Greek or Russian Orthodox? I thought Greek, but I didn't even know there was a fucking difference until you just said it. Ericoda says Rome was great and gay as fuck. It was beautiful. So true. I had flashbacks for Thanos. At Counterpoints, victory cannot be achieved without sacrifice. Survival is no different. True. I agree. There's no victory. There's only war. Yeah, sorry if I was too chill for that one, but I had a good time. I felt like we were hitting each other fun enough. La la la. Still scrolling. Sorry, guys. There weren't that many at Counterpointses, but I'm getting to the bottom. Now we're talking about Coomer elves, so I got to be catching up. Shinobi Homie says, "What's the Discord?" Yeah, if you're even moderately centrist or right wing, go get in the Discord because we actually have a good balance now, which is nice. But we need all the political people we can get so they can argue autistically for hours on end. At Counterpoints, is part 2 from the Way of the Gun in the near future? No, bum number 1. I hate to disappoint you. I posted that, and the first one literally got 500 views, and we had like 20,000 subs. Not only were the politics people not interested, not only were the 40K people not interested, it seemed like nobody was interested. So I deleted it so it didn't fuck with the algorithm, but I think Tay still has a copy. And what I want to do, because we got to focus, no offense to anybody who loves the media reactions. I love the media reactions too. But we got to focus on where we're getting paid. And where we're getting paid is 40K and live streams. So I'll continue doing a political show on live streams on Friday. I was thinking about doing a live stream show on Wednesday that would be 40K dedicated. So just like summarizing the news. If there was a new media reaction or something, we'd go over it. If there was a new model release, we'd go over it. And just kind of talk shop about 40K for a few hours. I think that'd be a fun way to spend Wednesday. And then we'll obviously keep up with like clout and political debates and all that kind of stuff on Fridays. And then the main YouTube channel, this is the game plan so far. We're going to keep doing what we're doing right now until we hit 40K subs. Then I'll turn the 40K sub channel into Counterpoints 40K. We'll do live streams there. But we will only post Warhammer 40K related content there. Then, for the second channel, we already have Counterpoints Coliseum, which is where I post all the live streams, although I haven't been aggressive about it. And then, we'll do a second Counterpoints channel, and it'll be exclusively political essays. Sorry for ranting for so long, but that's a game plan. Christian Blair says, "Damn, I love politics more, but I stay for 40K content. I am here for the base memes and comments." Yeah, we'll still be doing live streams and debates and shit. The political live stream community, I mean, we're like 50 people on a slow night, 100 to 150 on a busy night, and then Destiny will raid with like, 500, 800, and we'll entertain them, and we'll keep like 300 to 500, so it's not bad. There is probably more 40K fans than politics fans in the world, unironically. Yeah, probably. Why not midnight politics, midday Warhammer? I mean, I fucking would, but dude, this isn't full-time. You fucking kidding me? At Counterpoints, does what Nick Fuentes wants in his ideology meet the definition of fascism, of state capitalism, and authoritarianism? It meets authoritarianism, it almost meets fascism, and it's not state capitalism. He would leave the market intact. So, America is too big to fail. God will bail us out. So true, King. IPA, yeah. So this is the first thing that IPA has said that hasn't made me frustrated in a long time, because normally he's fucking talking shit about my lighting. But he hates that libertarian got equated to ANCAP. Yeah, it's fucking bad. Counterpoint. TS? I don't know. Did the FSB kill Dugina? I have no fucking idea. Russian's gonna Russian, bro. At Counterpoints, there are a small group of American libertarians that want to move away from the anti-state rhetoric, but they're failing thanks to Fabian and the Mises Institute. Yeah, and that makes me feel like it's a counterproductive venture, so I don't really give a fuck. At Counterpoints, do you think it would be productive for Nick and Vosh to debate? Yeah, I think it'd be great fucking memes. I think the problem is they're both fucking spurgs and they hate each other, so they probably lose their shit. Azariah, at Counterpoints, does it seem like Fabian's definition of leftism was everything I don't like? No, it had to deal with like his pure definition of capitalism. Germans and Russians love 40K, truly cross-cultural. Thank you, Off the Hook. At Counterpoints, you followed me on Twitter, and I've only had like one follower before you. You're a legend. Why are you so based? Decades of cringe. That's how I'm so based. At Counterpoints, best politics or philosophy books to recommend? I would do the Great Courses Institute. It's on Audible, and it is a bunch of like historical shit, but you can look up politics, you can look up military shit, you can look up all kinds of shit. And then all the other political stuff I've learned is from like Wikipedia and debates and conversations and history of American politics. So, and also a few college classes. So, Counterpoints, is your Marine reacts to Army stuff lacking? I thought it would be a fresh market. Yeah, unfortunately, I think because I do so much political shit and I do so much 40K shit, The Marine reacts to random shit doesn't do that great. It's literally just fucking Full Metal Jacket drill instructor. That's the only one that really popped off. 9/11 question mark? I mean, 9/11 was done by a bunch of fucking Arabs. I think some parts of the intel agencies knew, but they didn't communicate it good enough to stop it. But it wasn't intentional. They get threats like that all the time. Gray Z 174 at Counterpoints. Would you rather be able to read biblical Greek or biblical Hebrew? Greek, dude. Fucking Greek. Greek is the language of the ancient world. But CIA and Mossad did know. Like they knew that bin Laden was doing shit. So, but I mean they didn't know exactly. Like they knew bin Laden was doing shit before the coal, but they couldn't have prevented the coal. And then they knew bin Laden was doing shit now, and there was a bunch of chatter about it, but they didn't do enough to stop it. And I don't think they would have. I think they would have just I think they might have been able to like prevent one or two, but I think one or two would have also made it through. So that's why they had 4 fucking planes. They knew about a possible future attack, not the attack itself. Exactly. That's kind of where I'm at. Here's what I have to contribute to the subject. South Florida being ATA training and current role as Mafia Cop, Right Wing, Homeland, and Flynn HQ connects. I mean, I guess. But everybody's connected to everybody. Bin Laden was number 1 on FBI most left, so doesn't mean they knew planes were... Yeah, exactly. They knew bin Laden was a bad egg and he was planning shit. They didn't know exactly when it was going to happen. Biblical Hebrew or Quranic Arabic? Dude, I guess I'm just fucking anti-Semitic or something. I would like to know Arabic as well. So the Jews are like they're an insular culture, you know? So the only thing that you could do with biblical Hebrew is learn about like the Torah and shit. Whereas with Quranic Arabic, you would probably have enough crossover for regular Arabic, and with biblical Greek, you might have some crossover for regular Greek. And also, Greek was the major language of the ancient world, so you would be able to do a lot more. Mask off on Sunday? Yes, we'll be doing mask off. Counterpoints. Kind of sad. The first video I view is something explaining asymmetric warfare. Good times. I wish you success in your 40K. Yeah, bum number 1. So what we're probably going to do is we'll make the second Counterpoints channel exclusively political essays, but political essays involve, like, can the civilian government can the civilians take on the United States military? So, yeah. So, I mean, that's still political. So that one of those or things like that will go onto the second channel. At Counterpoints, Greek or Latin? Greek. You understand Latin people don't like fucking Latin, right? Like the Romans literally learned Greek, and the Eastern Roman Empire learned Greek almost exclusively. Yeah. Off the hook. Civilians cannot take on modern drones. So, yeah, so there's a conversation to be had here, and maybe I'll do like one scenario where the federal government pulls all the strings and knows how to do it. So if they basically break open NSA chatter, you don't need a warrant anymore. They can listen to everything you say. They use your cell phones. They track potential terrorists. They fucking track all their computers or clicks, their dark web or whatever. And they're able to drone strike or gun dog people on American streets. It's over. Because that is way that like that you can't defend against that shit, right? But if it's more like there's a civil war between combatants within the United States and a good chunk of the federal government defects because they're not getting paid or they're asked to kill conservatives or whatever, and then National Guard with normal troops and normal tanks and normal everything gets deployed into the United States, then no, civilians could absolutely take them. So, yeah. NSO is herpes and the NSA is the AIDS. As far as your phone and privacy. Yeah, probably. I mean, I know we don't have privacy anymore, so it is what it is. But I'm going to dip the fuck out before anything else happens. We still got like 55 people in the fucking chat. To the 35 people on YouTube and to the 20 people on Twitch, I want to say thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for having a good time, I hope. Check out all the shit, including the politics shit. And then Biblical Hebrew or Sanskrit? Hebrew on that one. Yeah. I don't know enough about Sanskrit. And if that's like Indian or whatever, I would prefer to learn Hebrew. Small arms fires brought down planes in wars. True. Biological transhuman cat girls or synthetic? Splicers from Batman Beyond. See you, buddy. See you, Christian. Known on sense says thanks for the stream. You're welcome, buddy. Biblical Hebrew collects the cool mystical stuff. Based.